We get it every time. You got me on? Shout out to all of my crew. East, West, North, South. On the continent, Europe. All abroad, international. Bring it in. There's a lot of things going on, y'all. 21st century is coming. 20th century almost done. A lot of things have changed. A lot of things have not. Mainly us. We're gonna get it together, right? I believe that. Listen, people be asking me all the time, yo, Mons, what's gonna happen with hip-hop? I tell them, you know what's gonna happen with hip-hop? Whatever's happening with us. If we smoked out, hip-hop is gonna be smoked out. If we doing all right, hip-hop is gonna be doing all right. People talk about hip-hop like it's some giant living in the hillside, coming down to visit the townspeople. We are hip-hop. Me, you, everybody, we are hip-hop. So hip-hop is going where we going. So the next time you ask yourself where hip-hop is going, ask yourself, where am I going? How am I doing? And you get a clear idea. So
I'm on top of it, I have to get the sound that you be seeking and the words that I be speaking. For righteous teachers, posse teaching. Anyone that likes this style that I be styling, mentally profiling. Should I say I'm smooth with the rough, serving justice? Suckers try to suck this, but I be scoping. Never, I'm not sleeping because it's culture freedom. G, who's posse ruling? PRG, word B. It's sort of simple, see? Now look at me, the holy intellectual type. When I write, the spirit always keeps me something hype. I get the mic, yo, cause it's my whole life, like I'm creating. Can I beat the states in? Can I say I'm great when there's not another brother greater? Turn a culture feeder for support. G, man, I press the point. Rock this funky joint, he joint. Alright, he joint. Alright, he joint. Alright, he joint. Alright, he joint.
Assalamu alaikum. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness there is no God but Allah, Muhammad is his messenger. I'd like to greet those on the Zoom platform and the Facebook Live in the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. It is customary that we open our meetings in prayer. So I ask that you assume the position of prayer. Prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, surely I am being turned to thee, all lost, striving to be upright, to he who originated the heavens and the earth, and I am not from among the polytheists. Surely my prayer, my sacrifice, my life, and my death is all to thee, Allah, the Lord of the worlds. No associate has thee of this in my commandment, and I am from among those who submit. O Allah, thou the King, there is no God but thee. Now, my Lord, I am thy servant. I have been greatly unjust to myself, and I do confess my faults. So grant me protection against my faults, for none grants protection against faults but thee. And guide me into the best of morals, for none guides into the best of morals but thee. And turn away from me the evil and indecent morals, for none can turn away the evil and indecent morals but thee. O Allah, make Muhammad successful, and make the followers of Muhammad successful, as how they made Abraham successful and the followers of Abraham. For surely they are praised and magnified. And O Allah, bless Muhammad, and bless the followers of Muhammad, as thou did bless Abraham and the followers of Abraham, for surely thou art praised and magnified. I bear witness none deserve to be served or worshipped besides Allah, who appeared in the person of Master Faraz Muhammad. I bear witness the most honorable Elijah Muhammad is the exalted Christ, and the honorable minister Louis Farrakhan is our divine reminder Messiah in our midst. Amen. Welcome. My name is Anthony Seven Muhammad. And thank you for joining us for a celebration of the 27th anniversary of the Million Man March, Holy Day of Atonement, presented by Vanguard Television Studio and Classic Hip Hop Nation. Today's film screening is titled The Million Man March, The Untold Story. Our panel discussion is titled The War on Hip Hop and Black Youth. Today's moderator is Anthony K. Muhammad, also known as A-Tone, hip-hop historian. On behalf of our sister Angela R. Muhammad and the production team, we thank you, the Most Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and the National Council and the regional labors for your continued leadership and support of the mission of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I would like to share a few reflections in reference to the production of the documentary. The first thing is the conversation with Sister Angela and my wife, Letitia Muhammad, helping with the conception of the project. And out of that conversation, Sister Angela got real busy reaching out to those who she would interview for the project. And out of that, being prepared to set up the interviews, you know, the difficulty of making contact with some individuals pending schedules. But the crowning point of the production was when we got message that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan agreed to the interview. Sister Angela R. Muhammad and the team was so elated and happy. And so during the day of the recording, we were in a hold pattern. And we were a little nervous about what was to take place. And then we were invited into the filming space. And while the production team was still, and the film crew was setting up, suddenly the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan entered the room singing the historical legendary recording of Etta James, at last. So we were elated. Right after that, the interview proceeded, and after the interview, we presented a few gifts to the minister. And at this time, I would like to present the documentary, The Million Man March, The Untold Story. Brother Anthony?
So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, one day I'm going to lead a march, brother. And he said, we won't leave Washington until we get what we go for, and that is justice.
Whether or not they have a million people here, of course, remains to be seen.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed the documentary. I would ask that if you can, please reach out to Sister Angela R. Muhammad at Vanguard Television Studio in support of this documentary, either by inviting her out to your city or organization to do a presentation, or either to purchase a copy of this documentary for your archive. The next phase of this presentation is a panel discussion moderated by our brother, Anthony K. Muhammad. We're going to have a short biographical sketch read to you by my wife, who is an extraordinary visual artist. I would like to introduce to some and present the other, my wife, Letitia Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to everyone who's here. Brother A-Tone was born in Lewes, Delaware in 1969. He became a B-boy at the age of 12 in 1981. A-Tone graduated from Duke University with a bachelor's degree in African American Studies with a concentration in computer science in 1992, and then moved to Washington, D.C., where he currently resides with his wife, Angela, son Assad, and daughter Kiama. While at Duke, he did an independent study on hip hop and joined the Zulu Nation after moving to Washington, D.C. While raising a family and working as an IT professional, A-Tone became the D.C. chapter leader for Zulu Nation. In 1994, he and his wife joined the Nation of Islam. Later, their children would do the same. A-Tone joined the Washington, D.C. Ministries of Arts and Culture and helped with many projects, including the film we just saw, where he wrote the script and directed the music. Today, A-Tone administrates an online radio station he helped found, along with Easy AD of Cold Crush Brothers, Classic Hip Hop Radio, and is working on the writing a book at this time. Please welcome him to the virtual stage where he will introduce and moderate our panel discussion. Brother Anthony A-Tone, the hip hop historian, Muhammad.
Welcome, our brother.
Thank you, Brother Anthony and Sister Letitia. As they just said, my name is Brother Anthony K. Muhammad, also known as A-Tone, the hip hop historian. I've been blessed to be the moderator for today's discussion, this evening's discussion. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, first of all, for being the vessel that Allah, God, used to bring the Million Man March into existence. I also like to thank the Executive Council of the Nation of Islam, which had a program earlier today, and we'll have another program tomorrow on NOI.org. I specifically like to thank Brother Abdul Arif Muhammad, who earlier today did a shout out of our film, The Million Man March, Untold Story, and my wife, Angela Muhammad. So I thank him as well. So I'm going to dive right into our discussion. It's going to be a little different than most panel discussions. First thing I want to do is I want to introduce our DJ. We have a DJ. I mean, we have a hip hop panel discussion. I think it would be fitting for us to have a DJ on board with us. So let's welcome our DJ. His name is RBI. RBI, you there? And I just want to say a few words about DJ RBI. He's an artist, an entrepreneur, working in arts and entertainment, particularly DJing, radio programming, production, stage performance, music production, and visual art. He's a longtime professional working in areas of youth development. He has taught and mentored students among organizations such as the DC Commission of the Arts and Humanities and nonprofits such as Words, Beats, and Life Incorporated and Guerrilla Arts Incorporated. Recording artists such as Kev Brown, YU, Priest of Nomad, Mamouna Yusuf, Substantial, and Sorok are amongst those that he has collaborated with and has released work featuring RBI. He regularly tours and performs with acts including Do Me Right and Zimbabwe Legit, Head Rock, Asheru, Ethan Spalding, and the Trap Rock Family, RNL, and 90s hip hop legend YZ. He is a creative partner and performer in the Seminole Hip Hop Theater Act, Human Prophets, and has been a regular associate of the Hip Hop Theater Festival / High Arts out of New York City, including a stint as a foundational participant in the groundbreaking A Rhyme Deferred alongside Camilla Forbes, Jabari Exum, and Chadwick Boseman, among others. In radio, he works as a producer, a DJ, and a host at 89.3 FM WPFW here in Washington, D.C. The name of his show is called Ill Street Grooves and Capital Ill, and engages the DMV nightlife circuit as a principal member of the DMV-based DJ collective Diamond Cutters. RBI founded the DC Hip Hop Archive in 2014, taking the initiative to institutionalize the historic journey, stories, and figures of the greater Washington, D.C. area's hip hop community. So thank you, RBI, for joining us and being part of this panel.
Well, now, definitely. Thanks for having me, brother.
Yes, sir. So he's going to help me. I'm going to introduce the rest of the panel, but he's going to help me introduce the panel. The first person that I want to introduce, let me get him prepared to come on. This is our brother, a brother I've known for a long time, who really helped me in my journey to becoming the hip hop historian. And he is MC Easy AD of the legendary Cold Crush Brothers.
song, homeboy. Get all the right, got your eyes got on. My goal is the same. I ain't for fame. I don't pop no.
Now, Easy AD is a product of the Boogie Down Bronx. He was born in Fordham Hospital and attended South Bronx Public School 50. AD attended Lehman College, majoring in business administration. And while still a student in high school and while at the Boys Club, AD began writing rhymes. And one of the Boys Club staff, along with AD and his friend Donald, decided to form a group called the Assalam Brothers. The group disbanded in the summer of 1977, and AD eventually met DJ Tony Tone, who was putting together a group called the Cold Crush Brothers. AD became the group's first MC, and the Cold Crush Brothers are one of the most influential hip hop groups of all time and has set the standard for all hip hop to come. Some of the most established artists cite the Cold Crush Brothers as their early inspiration. The Cold Crush Brothers were featured in the first hip hop movie, Wild Style, have released singles with KRS-One, Chuck D of Public Enemy, and Dougie Fresh. The Cold Crush Brothers are known as the Rolling Stones of hip hop culture because of their high energy stage show. In 1999, AD partnered with KRS-One on the creation of the Temple of Hip Hop. In 2008, after 12 years of running programs for teens at the Harlem YMCA's Jackie Robinson Youth Center, Easy AD began serving as a coordinating manager of the Hip Hop Stroke Intervention Program at Harlem Hospital and Hip Hop Heals. The stroke program moved to Columbia University Medical Center, where AD serves as a research coordinator in the Stroke Division, Neurological Institute at Columbia. Easy AD also serves as the Director of Health Education for the nonprofit hiphoppublichealth.org. Easy AD continues to connect with youth on their level in order to provide them with real options for the future. In his words, their success is our success. So please, let's welcome to the virtual stage, once again, Easy AD of the legendary Cold Crush Brothers. Right. Thank you, Brother AD, for joining us. Let me make sure, are you unmuted there?
I am unmuted and ready to share, information that can help bring a little bit of consciousness to the unconscious.
Thank you, Brother AD. So we'll continue, we'll get everybody introduced and then we'll dive into some of the questions that we have for you. So the next person we want to introduce is Sister Angela R. Muhammad. Sister Angela is originally from Benton Harbor, Michigan, and a graduate of Benton Harbor High School. She furthered her education at Howard University School of Communication, earning a bachelor's degree in film production. During her years at Howard, Angela had a desire to be a part of the arts, and in spite of her shy demeanor, and with the encouragement of a friend, she developed her art of written expressions by writing about her own journeys and bringing them to life on stage. Looking for Answers was her first stage play, which depicted a young woman in search of spiritual truth. This production was performed at the London, England Nation of Islam Mosque. Later in life, Angela faced one of the most difficult challenges by losing her baby due to a stillbirth. And out of this, Angela shared that very painful and personal experience by writing This Bitter Cup, which was performed at Howard University's Black Box Theater. Angela is married to none other than yours truly, Anthony K. Muhammad, a Tone hip hop historian, and she resides in Washington, DC with us, our family. And Angela created a production company called Vanguard Television Studios to empower women of color from all walks of life. Vanguard Television Studios, along with DC Ministry of Arts and Culture, produced the documentary, The Million Man March, The Untold Story. And Angela Muhammad is a woman with a vision for diversity, a woman that represents the very passion of a movement, and a woman that shares the importance of inspiring a nation. Angela Muhammad and Vanguard are the voice of a movement, the voice of a mission, here to make a change, one viewer at a time. So please welcome our sister, my wife, Angela.
She's so fine, asking me, I know this girl is
Are you there, Angela?
Yes, sir, I'm here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see if I can find you. I'm trying to get you.
You don't see me?
Let me see here. I got you. All right, here we go. There she is.
Thank you for Candy Girl too.
Yes. Anybody knows Sister Anna? She loves Candy Girl. She loves New Edition. So, and there's a special connection between New Edition and hip hop. So don't get it twisted. When New Edition first started to tour, they toured with hip hop groups, including the Cold Crush Brothers. That's how they got their start. So now the next panelist that we want to introduce is it's a brother by the name of Shahid M. Allah. Brother Shahid is a writer, orator, and publisher. He has a BS degree in speech communication and marketing from Syracuse University. He has a paralegal certification from Adelphi University. And he's published a number of books. Thy Kingdom Come, Dispelling the Greek Myth in the Black Fraternal System, and Take a Second Look. Other published works include him having been one of the four co-founders, the marketing director and writer of The Word, which is the first national newspaper of the Five Percenters. This writer Shahid Allah has served as a publishing consultant to other upcoming writers, such as Jamal Shabazz, the prolific internationally recognized photographer and journalist. Lecture circuit he's covered has been with Syracuse University, New York University, the University of Buffalo, the University of Massachusetts, St. John's University, Hunter College, Old Westbury College, Morgan State University, the University of Baltimore, York College, and he's helped co-produce the VH1 rock doc, Planet Rock, which is the story of hip hop and the crack generation, as well as co-producing parts 1 and 2 of the Rich Porter documentaries. So at this time, let's please bring on Brother Shahid M.
I'm like,
Wa alaikum salam, Brother Shahid.
How are you, sir?
Fine, sir. It's a pleasure seeing you.
Pleasure seeing you, Sister Angela. One of my idols, one of my original hip hop idols there, Easy AD.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate this opportunity. And I'm fired up, man, after watching that documentary. Of course, I've watched it several times before, but every time I watch it, I get hyped, man.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it more, and was glad to have contributed to help your wife, Sister Angela. You did an excellent job in the whole production unit. So
thanks so much, Brother Shahid. So we'll go to the next panelist. And we have some heavy hitters. I mean, so far, it can't get much heavier than this, but here we go. Our next panelist is the world's first turntablist, DJ Grandmaster DXT. Grandmaster DXT is a musician, producer, songwriter, and DJ who is set apart from the rest in musical innovation. In his early career, DXT was the main DJ at the #1 club in New York City, the Roxy. DXT is best known for using the turntable and operating it as a musical instrument. His mentor, Herbie Hancock, coined the phrase turntablism when referring to the technique Grandmaster DXT uses, and earned Grandmaster DXT a spot on the Grammy Award stage in 1984, where he, along with Herbie Hancock and the Rocket Band, received a Grammy Award for Best R&B Instrumental Performance. In more recent years, DXT has been inducted into the Guitar Center Rock Walk of Fame. In 2014, he has also won an additional Grammy in 2018 for Best Music Film as a contributor to the music for HBO's Defiant Ones, a four-part documentary that tells the life stories of record executive Jimmy Iovine and record producer Dr. Dre. Grandmaster DXT is currently working on a variety of original recording projects for major recording artists. So once again, let's bring on our brother DJ Grandmaster DXT. All right, thank you for joining us, brother DXT.
Peace, peace. How y'all doing?
Peace.
Yes, sir.
Right, so moving right along. I have some right now. I have some bad news, and I have some good news for everybody. The bad news is that one of our panelists that's on the flyer, brother Abdul Malik Saeed Muhammad, will not be able to join us this evening. He is our West Coast regional representative of the Nation of Islam. And the reason he could not join us is because he is in very high demand on the West Coast. And there's a number of families that have suffered loss. And he is the one who goes and helps heal them. He also brokers many different gang truces in the area. So due to his schedule, he could not make it this evening. So I assured him that we would hold it down in his absence. That's the bad news, right? But the good news is that we have a surprise guest panelist. And I'm not gonna take time to read his bio and all of that because everybody knows who he is. He needs no introduction. He actually is featured in the documentary that we just watched. So let's bring on, with a round of applause, our brother, Chuck D, of Public Enemy.
From the government, the other day, I opened and read it said they were suckers. They wanted me for their army or whatever. Picture me giving a damn, I said never. Here is a land that never gave a damn about a brother like me and myself.
Peace, Chuck.
Greetings. I'd like to say peace to everybody in the prestigious panel, Easy AD, Sister Angela, Vanguard Production, Brother Shahid, and Grandmaster DST. Usually DST and Easy AD pulls me to the side and they always forever schooling me. So I'm here to be on this panel along with you, Brother A, and I'm glad also that I followed up on my word because the last thing that I did in DC that you attended and your wife attended. So this is only so right, but also an honor to be able to talk about that unbelievable, fantastic day right there on that same grounds in 1995.
Yes, sir. We appreciate it, Brother Chuck. And we do have one more guest panelist that is on the flyer. I don't want to be remiss and not bring him on. Let me start with his information. So next panelist and last one to be introduced is our brother Kool Kim, also known as NOIL. And he's an MC from Staten Island, New York. NOIL is an acronym for New York's Original International Lover. And he began MCing at the age of 12. And in 1988, he paired up with a fellow Staten Island MC, Hosh G, to form the U.M.Cs. In 1991, the U.M.Cs released the first of 2 albums. And U.M.C stands for, by the way, Undisputed Masters of Charisma. And once you hear him start to talk, you understand why he is both an undisputed master of charisma and an original international lover. There's 2 songs that peaked on the Billboard Hot 100 list, one being Blue Cheese and the other One to Grow On from the album Fruits of Nature. And they both reached respectively #1 and #2 on Billboard's Hot Rap Single chart. After a label dispute, Kool Kim went solo and successfully reinvented himself as NOIL. And in December 2006, NOIL released the video for his song, Y'all Should All Get Lynched. The video was banned from YouTube after less than 48 hours and attracted a large amount of media attention for its controversial content. NOIL released his solo debut full-length album, Hood Treason, on June 26, 2007. And singles from that album include Y'all Should All Get Lynched, of course. NOIL also started a track team for youth in his community, a youth mentoring program for young women called Blackbird Fly, and a youth hip hop collective called PEMG. He eventually moved to Augusta, Georgia, built a fixer-upper home and did a do-it-yourself blog called Life After Hip Hop. He opened a bar called Flow and a boutique store with his wife called QP's Dollhouse. After all that, he decided to reclaim his former name, Kool Kim, and has now, in his words, achieved his final form. So let's bring on, with another round of applause, MC Kool Kim.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your friendly neighborhood fly guy, Kool Kim, aka NOIL of Ideal, and it is truly an incredible honor to be able to celebrate the anniversary of the Million Man March and this wonderful documentary that my great brother A-Tone and Angela put together. And I'm so honored to have the opportunity to speak with you guys. So let's get it in and rock out and talk some good talk.
Sir.
Thank you so
much. Yes, sir.
Let's get those people in on the waiting room, my brother. I got some people in the room.
You got some people in the waiting room? Okay.
Yeah, man. Come on.
It's still coming in. Okay, there we go.
Let's get them in.
Thank you, AB. Appreciate you, my brother.
All right.
All right, so we're going to dive right in. I will ask, I have an assistant. That's my son, Asad Muhammad. I'm going to ask him to scour the chat to make sure if there are any questions in the chat that he can bring it to my attention so we can share those questions with our panelists. But in the meantime, I did want to, kick off the panel with a question. Now, or let's start with a little background. The name of the documentary is The Million Man March, Untold Story. And the reason why we named this panel The War on Hip Hop and Black Youth is because Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan, if you notice in the documentary, he kind of leaned right into, all throughout his talk, he talked about young people, but he leaned specifically into hip hop and how hip hop at one point had edutainment as a focus, but then eventually it was shifted to gangster rap. Now, of course, when he talks about the war on hip hop, he's saying that this war is not by accident, it's intentional. And there are people who are actively involved with making this war happen. So what I want to do is open it up to the panel and ask you, from your point of view, I want to get the perspective from anyone who wants to jump in. From your point of view, do you see is the war on hip hop and Black youth as it pertains to this documentary and from your own experience?
I would definitely make the comment that when we use the term hip hop, we're kind of overshadowing what the real target is. We can move hip hop out the way. We can call it anything. The war is the war. And it is the expression that we are experiencing today that they are targeting because that's the expression of the day. So it could have easily have been just soul music. You see what I'm saying? It could have been classical music, but it's the fact that it's youth orientated, and the weapon must be pointed at the youth. So whatever the youth is doing is where the design is laid out to disrupt the consciousness, to direct that youth to go into a particular down a particular road to guarantee a particular outcome, to get people to act in a desired manner. Most of the time you can do that with younger people. And so clearly this social construct that we are functioning in has an element of it that's part of the social construct itself, hence social engineering. And so clearly the design comes with the program itself. It's not something that they look and say, well, we're going to need to do this. That's done in the methodology of it itself. It's part of it.
Now you make a very interesting point about whatever the youth is involved in at the time. That is the focus. Because I read an article where it said that the Black Panther Party was attacked because of their activity with the youth. And they actually had partnered with the Last Poets, and the Last Poets were attacked because they had some type of influence over youth as well. So let me ask anyone on the panel, if you could answer this. What is it about hip hop that made it? We understand it's all about what the youth is into, but what is so attractive about hip hop that youth are into it?
Brother,
go ahead.
I'm gonna answer that question, but I want to rewind it a little bit to what you asked us before as well, and say that in 1972, during Honorable Elijah Muhammad's Theology of Time lecture series, he said something very significant, and it was kind of like a seed that was planted in the minds of those who were listening. He said, for 40 years, I have been sounding this kind of trumpet from his mouth. There was the end of Noah's sounding of his trumpet in his day and times, and there was the end of Abraham and Lot sounding their trumpets. There also came an end to Moses and Aaron sounding their trumpet to Pharaoh and his people. These kind of trumpets are the mouths of men and the words proceeding from their mouths. These are the first trumpets to sound, and they come from the mouths of men. There is a other trumpet that is heard, but not directly from the mouth. It passes through a mechanical instrument. Emphasis on mechanical instrument. This kind of trumpet, I am warning you to be aware of. They are linking it up now. Now, my point. That was said in 1972. When was hip hop born? Around that time, 1972, 1973. Now, of course, we know in the nation that there's a trumpet that is linked up to the wheel, that when it sounded, it caused avalanches and earthquakes. But from a spiritual level in the mind, you can also draw that up to understand that that mechanical instrument is that radio, DJ Red Alert, Mr. Magic, where you heard groups like Public Enemy, Rakim, KRS-One. I got some wax here. You talked about the Last Poets, right? I got Rakim here. I got Public Enemy. I got the wax, brothers. I know y'all got the wax in your kingdom too. So hip hop, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has said, is a messenger for our people. It's a trumpet that has the brass truth in it. And the enemy saw this, and they wanted to cut a shortage in the magnetic attraction of the conscious rappers communicating, conveying rhythmic, soul enlightening music to our youth to pull them out of the grave of ignorance. They wanted to cut a shortage in what Brother Chuck D was saying, and what Easy AD and the Cold Crush and brothers like Cool Kim are saying to our youth. They wanted to change it. Rhythmatic, systematic, world control, magnetic, you know,
genetics, command your soul.
All right. So demands your what? Soul.
Your soul.
So in short, man, that war on hip hop began as soon as the enemy heard what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said in 1972, as hip hop was being born.
Well, I just want to talk about this. One of the things that I noticed about, like, when you come to panels and people are on panels, is that they talk about references. I can go by my experience. So at that, when hip hop was being created, I was that young person. All right. So, and then you understand the frequency and the vibration, right? So music is a vibration, it's a frequency. So we understand the concept of the human brain, and the frequency can control the way that you act, the way that you move, the way you think, right? So music is really frequency, whether it's hip hop, whether it's rock, whatever name you want to call it. The frequency of the music has been changed based on what they want to do, how they want to control, how they want to behave. But then you add on the implicit biases in your community, right? We have environmental pollution, we have poverty, we have things that on TV that subject our kids to a lot of things that indate them and also put them in the state of hypnosis. So let's look at
hip hop music, right? So we have a genre of music, right? Hip hop, the culture itself, where it was created with young people, by young people, for young people, right? And then you take those messages, whether they were good, whether they were positive, and then you add the vibration of the music, and then you're able to control how people behave, how they act, whether they're enthusiastic, whether they want to become violent, and things like that. So those things are major factors, right? So then you incorporate, like, how do we, and I'm talking about the people who control the economics in this country, how do we make money off this in a major way, right? Not only by, so we incorporate ourselves by, number one, buying the companies, right? And then we get individuals that they are a slave, meaning that they have a price for their artistry, right? There's people who will say, yeah, you know, whatever you pay me, I'm going to do that, because sometimes when it doesn't affect you directly, it doesn't bother you, right? So if it's happening around the corner, it's fine. So influx comes Trans-Europe Express, the electronic sound. They take the vibration of the music and they make it electronic. So remember, when you think of the consciousness of music, right, you think of the wax, the diamond needle, the music coming out of that speaker, right, it gives you a different type of feel. So when you change the music and the frequency to electronic, so now you can orchestrate and play individuals and people as you see fit, right? So let's go back into, quote unquote, when the culture was being birthed, right? Because it wasn't called hip hop when the culture was being birthed. It was just music, all right? So it was just music, wasn't called hip hop. So 73 is in that realm, right? So what was happening in 1973? You have to go look at the history and what was happening in that time for you to get a clearer understanding on why things are created, why things happen, and all those. So let's go. Now we in 2000 and what? We in 2002. Nothing has really changed. Nothing has changed. Everything is exactly the same as it was. It's just in abundance, right? We have more people incarcerated, right? So here's some statistics that I found, because we live in a world where people only become conscious when you deliver statistics. So here's some statistics. So the United States has the highest level of incarceration. We have 465,000 brown men and women in federal state prison. This is in the year 2006. So 2006, that was like the average, you know, percentage of people in prison. So then we move on to 2018, where Black people represent 33% of the people in prison, but only 12% of the adult population in this country. So we move on to the music aspect. When different companies started buying up companies, right? They said, listen, we want to buy this company. We want to tell people what to do and what to say. So I'm gonna give you an example. Like, again, we can't share everything. We got to do indirect information. So here's an example. When the East Coast and the West Coast, quote unquote, became a thing, that was orchestrated by the companies. They sat down with people and said, this is what we want you to do. And you're going to do that because we're going to pay you X amount of dollars. And they didn't see anything wrong with that. They was like, I'm gonna make music, I'm gonna get paid, I'm gonna be able to buy me Bentley, cars, everything that means nothing in this world. And then they came to a guy like, for example, they came to the guy who made F. Compton. What's his name?
Tim Dog.
Right, because said G, who's a really, really good friend of mine, they sat down with Tim Dog and said, no, we don't want the other stuff that you're making, but if you make a record dissing West Coast, then we'll sign you. So he made the record F. Compton. So everything is orchestrated. Us being here tonight is because we care about things, right? And we care about young people. No matter how old I become as an individual, every day I wake up, my spirit, my soul, and my energy, I am 9 years old, right? So even though when I see myself talking to people, communicating with people, or see myself on a videotape, it doesn't feel like that's me, because that's not who I am inside. I'm that 9-year-old kid in elementary school when in 3rd grade, when they told you that you couldn't read. You can't read. And that's where the school to prison pipeline begins, based on reading scores and birth rates in a particular year. They know how many young people and how many prisons to build based on reading scores and birth rates. So I just want to share that, and thank you for listening to all that information.
All right, so here's what I do. I got a couple hands that came up. I want to start with, I saw Cool Kim's and my wife's hand up. So I'm gonna have to let my wife go first. I want to continue living in peace at home. But I do want to say this point before I turn it over to my wife. And just to kind of dovetail off of what AD just said, the minister did say that there was a meeting outside of Los Angeles. And that meeting took place in 1981. It was a meeting between record executives, buyers of state prisons, and state governments. So when we say it's by design, we're not just saying that as some ethereal things, we're throwing it out there and there's no substance to it. This is really, a meeting really did happen. Now, at this point, I'll turn it over to Sister Angela, then we'll go to Cool Kim. Go ahead, Angie.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to go back to your point about the war on hip hop and Black youth, right? And I know for me, a lot of times when I think of war, and I'm not a hip hop artist, I'm speaking more of a fan, observing on the outside, right? So when I think of the war, a lot of times I think of it with the brothers, but there's also a war on the women. And I think about some of the artists that's out now and how they have, they showing their bodies, they speaking on body parts and doing this, with that person and drinking and, all this stuff. And how if they have our men thinking on a low level, like Brother AD mentioned, music is energy. And if they're thinking on a low level, I was just listening to the minister, and he was talking about how to give birth to a God. And he said, you can either give birth to a devil or you can give birth to a God. And if a nation can rise no higher than its woman, and the women have our brothers thinking on a low level, then what are we giving birth to? So it's also a war on women. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Excellent point.
Excellent, yeah. And I'll turn it over to Cool Kim. There's something I was thinking about that she was talking about there. But I'll go ahead, Cool Kim. Go ahead and
would you like to why don't you just say what you're gonna say this way? I don't bring it off topic from what your thought is real quick.
I lost some point. I had it.
Oh yeah, I know that go.
And I was looking at my wife's face and I lost the point. So
yeah, it happened. Like
go ahead,
to be young and in love, right?
Exactly.
All right, so family, let me just say this before I begin. I may be in some cases not the devil's advocate, because the devil doesn't need an advocate, but I may push back on some of the things and ideas that we're speaking to, primarily because I think that in some cases we're using antiquated terms, in some cases we're misnomering things. And so what it does is it perverts our ability to effectively diagnose the problem, because we're misnaming what the actual problem is. So a case in point, right, that I think that I'm hearing an example of. And of course, these are just thoughts, like we having a thoughtful build, not a I'm not trying to get points. We're not here to get points. We're here to catch a build and raise the vibrations, and hopefully, like we come to grander understandings, because we bouncing brilliant ideas back and forth amongst brilliant men and women. So in that spirit, let me share these thoughts. I think it's a misnomer to call it a war. Armed conflict, the theater of war, is a very specific thing. I think that because we're looking at it as a war, when we try to express that issue to the wider population that is not as savvy as it relates to conspiracy-based theory, as it relates to knowledge of self, insights, politics and stuff like that. Their understanding of war is very fundamental. It's armed conflict, it's fighting, it's, you know, it's that. What we're looking at for the Black man and woman in America is in the form of hip hop as it relates to this conversation, in my opinion, what I think we're looking at is more of a sedition, a disinformation plan, propaganda. You know, so we're looking at frames being made. Frames are very important in business building, and they're very important in marketing and promoting. And everything that we're doing is about marketing and promoting. When we're having conversations about the conditions of a music that is being manipulated to market and promote an idea about a particular group of people, then we have to look at the tools that are used in that effort. And so if we look at it as a war, then we apt to use the wrong tools. And if we look at it as what do you call it, the propaganda, then we're in a space to put together solutions that combat the propaganda-based attack versus, you know, picking the wrong attack. Further to that, someone mentioned Black Panther Party. Why was, I think my brother Shahid Allah said something in the nature of why the Black Panther Party was attacked years ago. What made them?
That was me. That was me.
That was you, H-On?
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna give it to Shahid regardless, though, because I feel like he just, the way he was speaking, it just sounded more. Okay. Now let me go. If everybody know, me and H-O always mess with each other, so I'm not stopping just because I'm on this very auspicious day. The Black Panther Party was marginalized and made public enemy #1 because of the good work that they did in the community that threatened to make them heroes in the community, mobilized the community, and created self-servicing programs like the lunchroom, like the summer food program that they put together that put them up because like, yo, they'll win the people over. All right. Now, once we understand why the Black Panther Party was actually targeted, right? Now we can look at hip hop if we're going to make that correlation and say, well, why was hip hop targeted if they sit in the same space? Well, in that time that we were talking about, and I'm pretty sure that Shahid was building on this, about the times of the Chuck D's, the Brand Nubians, the Jungle Brothers, the Lakim Shabazz, the Divine Stylers, the U.M.Cs, the leaders of the New School, the Sons of Berserk, you know, all of these groups that had this very abstract, intelligent, thought-provoking, unique style of oratory, of emceeing, were marginalized. And we know the point of marginalization if we look at it historically. The point of marginalization is the point when they started calling that type of music happy rap. It was on the cusp of the same time that EPMD was dropping their campaign, No Crossover. So no sellout, no crossover was affixed and used to describe happy rappers and happy rap, which was used to be an insult, right? Was used to describe creative, intelligent, thought-provoking, unique, abstract artists. The ones that made the same hip hop y'all all pine for when you get what you call it, nostalgic. That's the same hip hop that all of us, everybody in this room, everybody abandoned, everybody sold out, everybody let down, everybody gave it up, everybody let the source and vibe, specifically the source, turn this creative, beautiful music that was being controlled by us, being made by us. We allowed them to dictate, because anybody that makes the lists, see, this is what once again, if we don't know the actual symptoms, we don't know how they're doing it to us. So they started off by making lists. That's the best way to control people. If I make the list of the top people that's talking today, right? Just make the list. Yo, I was on this ultimate panel, and yo, I'm gonna give you the 5 people that had the most illest things to say in this amazing panel. Now, the 5 people that I put whosoever I put up on there. Everybody else that's in this panel, whether they agree with me or not, I'm the person that you now have to look to justify whether you should be amongst the top 5. You understand? So what the source did is that they positioned themselves to be what was then called, before we called them influencers, we called them opinion makers. So the source positioned itself to be an opinion maker. So when they gave you 5 mics or 3 mics or 2 mics, before people even heard your music, they had already decided who and what you were. When the editors of that magazine, if you ever went to the source and actually visited the source and you were like, yo, you're the person giving out 5 stars, you should be that person. You're not qualified for that, right? But we never checked it. And then when we look at the origins of the source, from whence it came, from a couple of college teens in one of the most racist northern cities in the world, right? And so these people became the Bible of hip hop culture and music. So now you are putting people in a position to dictate the propaganda because you've given them a position to be opinion makers. You've allowed these same people who mean you no good, who are run by your open enemy, to now say that the artistic, beautiful, the music that made you love this thing is a happy rap thing, it's a clown thing, and so you abandon that. And right on the cusp of that, what's the groups that came out? When PE came out, what was the response to PE? NWA. We got UMCs and Fushnickens and all these up full, exciting, jump around, having a good time, positive. What's the response? And I love these brothers, Cypress Hills. Then everybody was smoking weed. Remember, everybody was smoking weed right on the cusp of that? Everybody was smoking. Everybody had a 16. Everybody was smoking weed. Out of no, people that would never have smoked were smoking at that time. This is the power. And why is this the power? Now, and my thoughts on this thought. Let's keep this in mind, because we got a lot of pious people in this discussion. So let's discuss this. In the Bible, what's the first statement? In the beginning, there was the what?
Word.
The word. In Islam, when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given the Quran, the Injil, by the Injil, and they said, recite. They didn't say, yo, read this, because we know that he was illiterate. They told him to recite. What do MCs do? We recite.
He was instructed to read. Ikra.
Ikra.
Read.
Read.
Boom. What do? Got your cell phone out? We reciting. You understand what I'm saying? What we're reading. What do we do? What do you do in witchcraft? What do they do? What are words? Words are, you use it in witchcraft, you do spells. Words are spelled. That's why we go to spelling bee. You understand what I'm saying? So in the beginning, there was the word. Ikra. You know what I'm saying? Read. The nature religion, which is Wiccan. Spells. All of these things that are telling you that the people that are using the spoken word in Islam, you're not even supposed to be playing rhythm along with music. It's just supposed to be drums and vocals. It's not supposed to have harmony and stuff like that because it's intoxicating. So here it is. You have the one music that speaks words. I'm saying actual things. I'm not singing, I love you so much, where it's not much to it. I'm saying stuff to you like,
you got a voice, bro.
I'm saying, I wish, right?
Yeah, man.
I'm saying stuff like, the essence of what makes up self despises wealth. My concepts defy the obvious to move in stealth, while someone else might call attention to the dissatisfaction of the hierarchy's action with no counter reaction. Life is cause and effect, and your effect on life causes you to live in suffering and strife. See, losers never win, especially when facing men like him. My eternal concepts are immeasurable compared to your local focal points as big blunts to joints. How could they let that kind of, those spells that I'm saying right now permeate the world? How could they allow that in a world that they built on sedition, on propaganda, on subversion? How could they allow it? Knowing the power of words throughout our history. That is what we need to concentrate on, is understanding why they're doing this to us, why this is so powerful, and then building success models around how to effectively use this skill set that we've created for our own benefit again.
Thank you, Brother Kim.
Wow.
Brother Aton.
One more thing before I want to hear from Chuck D. He hasn't said anything yet.
Right. That's exactly what I was.
But before we turn over to Brother Chuck, I just wanted to just a quick response to you, brother, in regards to propaganda. Propaganda is an indispensable element of wartime mobilization. So you're correct about propaganda, but propaganda is also part of war. That's one.
Well, I think the distinction that's important, right? And that's a great point. The distinction that is important is understanding that propaganda in its essence is a precursor to wartime. It's generally used to justify the actions or the atrocious actions of one group against the other. So we propagandize to criminalize or dehumanize one group or the other. So now what we find in our music is an actual effort to dehumanize our people. They've dehumanized our Black women. They've dehumanized the Black man. The Black man is a hyper masculine criminal that's violent prone. The Black woman is a whore, and that's, you know, and useful and has and a scammer. Like that's what we are in this world. And they've used that to propagandize that so they can justify when they start committing the atrocities of the quote unquote war, which it won't be a war. It's just going to be a roundup.
Right.
Hey, Tom, can I just, please, I just want to say this one. I'm going to say it's very light.
Okay, go ahead, real quick.
The war, it is a war. That's number one. Number two, the war, you eat it every day. Genetically modified organisms. That's all I have to say.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna continue revisiting that point about war versus propaganda, or them both being part of the same family. Now, before we go to Chuck, I do want to acknowledge the fact there are some folks with their hands up, and after we go to Chuck,
I'll be quick too. Because everything that Cool Kim said, NOIL said, leading from Brushy and D all the way up to DXT and AD, of course. I mean, really, why is there such a thirst for the forum? Why is there a thirst for the town hall? It's been a separation. You know, like Kim said, like words. Don't let that word also come in different languages, because language is the great divider of peeps anyway. So there's bigger and other plans out there. I asked the question, and this goes out to everybody on the panel: how young is young? What is the youth anyway? And when does the light bulb go from youth, and I know, boom, I'm adult, and now I'm ready to go to war and battle because I understand what the war is in front of my, sight. Like the energy is youth. And if something hijacks that energy, they either want to control it or direct it or dead it. And that's the end of youth right there, when you can direct or dead it. And right now, seriously, everybody's a screen agent. You could say what you are, what you ain't, or whatever, but one common thing that people got at this moment, they either got an Android or an iPhone in their pocket. And the beginning seed to all this is, like you were saying, Brother A, it started in the radio with something organically humane coming through there. The beginning of hip hop, if we want to call it that construct, it was organically humane coming through these things, these tools, these technologies and all that. But, keeping it facts over feelings, Scarface once told me, he said, yo, Chuck, I want to be able to do this, but they throw, the technology throw everybody's up in the sandbox at the same time. And I feel good when I do my thing, but if we all in the sandbox, I turn around and see somebody 4 years old, we all in the sandbox with these devices, man. How do we avoid these things actually controlling us? So the whole thing is youth. How young is youth? Because the minute they see that energy, if they can't direct it and control it, the plan has been since minute one to dead it. And this goes before us coming to this hemisphere. Just like everybody speaking on this panel is bringing something that you can feel. But the more that humans have been made into robots, look, they just did the switch. It's like humans going to engage in the machine, in the gadget, and then eventually that's going to be the warmth that you're going to try to get your humanity out of. So the humans right now, we're looking around, we said, damn, man, we talking about 30 years since that point. Since that point in the 90s switchover, that humans have turned into machines and machines have morphed into human beings. In 1996, a year after the Million Man March, Colin Powell's son signed a Telecommunications Act, which took all what was left of radio stations and put them under conglomerates. What that meant was that little radio station that people used to listen to in the community in Baton Rouge, they sold out to a situation. You have 4 or 5 radio conglomerates controlling the signal to Black people. Well, before that, Minister Farrakhan says, I went to cities that people said, okay, you can go and do your thing there, whatever. And they didn't know that Minister Farrakhan was pulling 25,000 here in New Orleans, 15,000 and it's East St. Louis, 20,000 people and Birmingham. So he already had a Million Man March around the country with a few of his movements leading up to the Million Man March in the 80s, like the documentary said. 1995, we all knew, everybody knew that, of course, the enemy's watching. But can we have this one day? And maybe this one day we can probably stave off in our individual self what was going to come. It was almost, it had to take place. But also, like you make a plan, enemy got 3 plans. Can you make 3 and tell your commonality that there's 4 plans ready, and just us being a united sort of mindset for the minute? Yes, you are in a war. And then the more that you detach from the diaspora of people that look and feel and talk just like us outside the box of the United States of America, the more you detach from that, you're in a box of, like Easy AD said, you got 12%. You got 12% of people in a room against 88%. If you ain't got no skills or martial arts skills or some, some whatever DEFCON skills, you ain't getting out of that room. But if you got skills, you're getting up out of that room at that 12%. And that's what they feared. They feared that our 12% was going to be mighty because it was going to connect with that word. And that word, that word had energy. That was youth, whether it was 55 or 65. So the Million Man March that day, the numbers didn't matter. And when you talk about numbers, and DXT knows this better than anybody. Numbers, and he was one of the first people actually to master a computer in music. Numbers, binary, 0, 1, numbers don't matter when it comes down to our humanity and the collecting our humanity. That's when the numbers matter, and the only thing when numbers matter. If you put it in an industry, it's like, all right, we have a quality that's over quantity. The minute you start dealing with numbers, that's when God walks out the room. And that happened, just in the 80s with the record companies. We were just numbers. So when we actually pitch numbers against those numbers and say, we don't know about the quantity of whatever you're looking for to count up, but we do have strength in numbers, even if if there's numbers that you don't see. So just to end on that point, it's like the sandbox. We all in the same sandbox now. You look and see somebody 2 years old and somebody 75. They got one thing in common. Something is in their pocket that they feel that they have to have. You want to talk about emotion? If I reached in every single person on this panel and took their phone and smashed it against some concrete, you're going to get an emotion that we probably ain't seen since the 90s.
Now, I will say this, Chuck. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to turn it over to Cool Kim. And I see Grandmaster DXT kind of contemplating something, so maybe he wants to chime in.
Yeah,
I mentioned the sandboxes.
I wanted to jump in too at some point.
Okay, RBI.
Just a couple of those things too,
Okay,
but
cool.
y'all go ahead and I'll hop in.
All right, we'll go Cool Kim and then you. But I just want to say real quick regarding the sandboxes, the Android and iPhone thing, it's like Cool Kim said about the fun kids being looked at as not being so fun anymore. So anybody who's got an Android ain't looked at as being fun anymore. All the iPhone cats are like, y'all play it out. Y'all need to get with this iPhone. My wife she did it in my own house. I still got an Android and I'm an IT guy. But Anyway,
same brother.
Just want to touch on that, and then so Cool Kim, you can go ahead. Oh, one more thing too about war. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said this. He said, "We're in a worse condition after the Million Man March than we were before the Million Man March because we're at war, but we don't know."
Yeah, let the cat out of the. We had to let the cat out of the bag, and once you let the cat out of the bag with those numbers, then you know you really at war. The adversary and the enemy is like,
But it also speaks to the same point.
We had to.
The same point that Cool Kemp made, though, is relevant because he also said we're at war anytime somebody's trying to kill you and you don't know it.
Exactly.
Then you become a partner in your own self-destruction. So that's where the slaughter comes in that Cool Kemp talked about.
Yep.
That we walk around not even knowing that this plan is in full effect. So anyway, Kim, and then RBI, and then DXT. I know DXT got something to say, and then Shahid. Go ahead, Kim. Oh, I'm sorry, you got to, oh, I got the power. Come on now, I got the power to unmute.
There we go. Okay, so let me just say this real quick, because what I don't want to see happen because of me is that we spend too much time splitting hairs on whether we're at war or not, right? So I think for the conventional purposes of, we having a conversation about an overall idea, and so using a concept like we're at war makes sense to express the dramatic nature and the urgent nature of what we're experiencing. Why I'm kind of harping on that, and I won't say any more after this, other than to say, if y'all feel like y'all in war, then that's peace. I'm not gonna argue that point. Like, I'm not mad at it. It's not like it's a war. It's not that.
Deal breaker,
all right. But what it is that I'm saying is, check it out. I read this book, Marketing Plans for Dummies, years ago. It was talking about, and I think this is very important overall for the overall discussion. They were talking about understanding what business that you're in, right? I find that Black America specifically has a real issue with understanding what business that we're in almost everything that we engage, okay? Yep. So the example that they gave was Kodak. Kodak, as we all remember from back in the day, was the leading film processing company in the world. You remember, you go on your trip, go on a school trip, you had your little thing, go to the mall, go hand them the little envelope with the joint. 2-3 days later, you got your pictures with your negatives. You're like, you go out the park. We all looking at the pictures like, oh, so this movie with the great adventures. That's what we knew Kodak for, right? And so Kodak's marketing statement, they're this is our direction. It said like this, check it out. Kodak is the largest chemical producer in the process that makes film develop. That's what business Kodak thought they were in. And conventionally, that's what business they were in. They were in the chemical process that develops film. That's what they were in. So building their funnel, building their business line, building their strategy for how they were going to engage the world was a precursor by this marketing statement. But that's not what business they were in. Here's the capper. Check this out. Did you know that from what I read in this book, so I could be wrong if you do your diligence, but from what I read in the book, they said that Kodak had the first patent on the digital camera, but it was 8 pounds. And because they said nobody's going to carry an 8-pound camera around, this is a wrap, they shelved it and forgot about it. Now, 2022, you don't even think of Kodak. You don't think of Fujifilm no more. You're thinking stuff like Canon. You're thinking Sony. You're thinking Samsung. You understand what I'm saying? You're not thinking of Kodak, who we grew up on with film, because they didn't know what business they were in. And because they didn't know what business they were in, their solution to the business was false. And so their prep work was false. And so when you hear me say, splitting hairs about semantics, it's like kind of silly, and I don't want to get caught up in it too heavy. But I think there's a larger point that connects to this particular issue is very important, which is not understanding the business that we're in when we go about these campaigns. The art of war teaches us that before we go out on a campaign, we should make a strategic assessment. The strategic assessment is the way, the weather, the terrain, the leadership, and the discipline. In these conversations, it's never included. That we just say things because we feel, but it's not the fact, it's not the feeling, it's the facts. And unless we really tap into the fact of what's happening, what strategy do we develop? If we develop a wartime strategy, well, then that's a PT strategy. That's a weapons strategy. That's a training strategy. That's an education strategy. That is a local mobilizations strategy. There's a whole lot of things that have to go into developing that model. If we're saying there's a propaganda strategy, well, all right, let's see how much of this stuff we have access to. It's propaganda, it's this is where they're at with it they're at this stage in this campaign. Okay, we can actually combat that because the means by which they're doing it is through our medium. We control the medium. Now that we know that, what are we missing and why are they able to be so seditious? Because we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the institutions and we don't have the systems in place to effectively engage. So of course, you go to the electric company, you don't know hide nor hair about what's going on with the bill. Your wife sent you there, you ain't know what's going on. You ain't know they ain't pay it last month or they only pay half. You look like a dummy because you don't know what's going on, but you're trying to resolve the issue. And they can tell you anything because you don't have access to anything. But when you know, and you go in there because you've been handling it. Nah, listen, I'm just looking at my bank accounts. It sells this to this and this, and then this and that and that and that. It's a whole different conversation. But we don't know what business we're in. We have a raft of people that are so talented, so intelligent, so innovative that in fact, they are at the beginnings of this billion-dollar industry that we have no real stake in the game. Are the Black man and woman's largest export, its only export from America is culture that we have no control over. That's where it's happening. We don't have infrastructure and we don't have institutions. We haven't built anything that serves as a scalable and a replicable model. So when you do something and I say, hey, Chuck, check this out. I've been working on this thing. I'm working with these kids, this and that. Here's my success model. Well, no, here's my proof of concept. My proof of concept is this is what we did. This is how it worked. And this was the results. Here's my success model. We did this, that, and the third with that proof of concept, and we generated $500. It's scalable. Now we see that it works. We see it's real. Now let's make that. Now let's replicate that throughout the country and make it work. But we can't because we don't know what we're fighting. So we're going outside, ready to knuckle up. We went to boxing class and everything. Worked on our slips, everything. We are ready, except it's a gunfight.
I think, Kim, I think one of the things is that, you know, if there's a war, and let's say if we use that word, you know, it was basically saying that everything you're saying is like, how do you turn the me into we? Because you know an individual ain't gonna win. And you know, like the we has at least a chance to organize. And I think in the documentary and what Mr. Farrakhan was saying, he said, and after everybody came rolling in and like, okay, I got something to say. It's a million heads in there and I'm gonna get on the rostrum and then spit my agenda.
Yeah.
He fell back. He fell back. He says, yo, the thing that got to roll out of here, not my organization. Because if we don't have organization and everybody get their organization, all right, boom, you can have your little fiefdom, get your organizations together, but at least do that. And everybody thought that this was going to be this big collective, one organization, kumbaya against the war. And that didn't happen. When it was clear, I got it clear that day. It's like, I can't be no individual in anything out here. And if there's any organization that's out there, we can't look at an old organization as an old organization, because all an organization is that infrastructure collection of energy. With an old head, you know, old heads get tired. So how anybody gonna look at this? Is why we think that this country's a joke, because dude is 80 years old.
89.
And whether you believe whether he's in or whatever, the dude gets tired. Dude can't tell me dude ain't tired 90% of the time. And I'm talking about the president of this country or whatever you want to weigh that into anything. Organization is the only thing that save us. And we got closer to building some organizations and the thing that we're in hip hop and music than the rest of us as a people did in towns, states, countries. We couldn't even battle a situation where there's 100,000 black men in prison in 1970, and then there happened to be close to 2 million by 2020, facts over feelings. So I'm just like saying, everything you saying, Kim, is so to the point. It's like, it's organizations, and how do you turn the me into we? And that's what the minister was saying that whole time. Everybody spoke that day. I kept looking at this person, all right, they're head of that organization. It made me look at, okay, I won't feel like the inner youth energy inside of me. I ain't gonna go in on the Urban League. I ain't gonna go in on NAACP. They need young energy, and young energy need to go there if they ain't got no organization, because that's the only way any organization is going to exist. You got to bring young energy, and they could probably maybe along the way revise and adapt and not be a Kodak in 2023, you know?
And if that's a part of their business strategy, right? If that's what they, if they in the inception, right, recognize that a component of what they're going to do is about building the next generation of activists or whatever the organization represents, right? If they understood that that was a component of what their business model would be, understanding what business they're in, right? We're going to be in this business. So we have to figure out what does outreach look like to us? What does engaging the youth look like to us? You know what I'm saying? Or we're going to be collecting money for this organization. And so now we have this financial component. What does that look like? What is that business? So that when we on the other side of it, we're not having conversations about what happened to the money? What happened to this? Who did that with what? We're not having that conversation. You know why? Because understanding the business that we were in, right? Once somebody said, yo, we're going to collect money, and I'm not speaking directly to Million Man March, but it can be applied to that as well. I'm saying, but once somebody knew, yo, we're going to collect money. Oh, word? All right, cool. If you're going to collect money, we need a committee together to this entire process, the entire funnel from top to bottom, because you know the enemy's going to do. They're going to try to use this as an excuse for blah, 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 because it always happens in any organization that we have. They always try to look at every organization, and it speaks to what you just said, Chuck, because you said, listen, they always come after our organizations, right? This is telling you what the real problem is. They're always going after the organizations that can set up the infrastructure, the systems, the institutions, and the support that will provide for our progeny. But they always stopped it. They stopped it at the Honorable Marcus Garvey with the first FBI agent, the first agent. They went up from Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and the Black Panthers is famous what they do to stop us from becoming a collective.
Brother, I respect the time. I respect the time. Hold on, brother Shahid. I respect the time. I did promise RBI that he could say something, and then Shahid. But before I turn it over to RBI, there's a thing that Ms. Farrakhan said. He said that we have to have a cause bigger than ourselves, bigger than our individual selves, that we can all believe in. And I think what happens is we're all believing in what we have going on for ourselves, but we don't have a cause that we all agree on that we can work towards a common goal. Then we can work through a lot of those differences. So RBI, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, am I audible or too loud, too low?
No, you good. No, you sound great.
Cool. Yeah, peace to everybody, man. So y'all went so many different places. So I'm not really gonna touch on too much specifically because you did touch on some of the things that I was thinking. But I have a different argument that I present sometimes, and part of it is like what Chuck said, something about how young is too young. I think how young is the youth. I think that was your phrase. So look, when it comes to a lot of these discussions, we've been having a lot of these discussions about what's been happening with hip hop and the war in hip hop and how outside forces are, doing what they got to do to undermine the power that we can harness and use it as a force for good. And we're talking about youth a lot. I look at it at this point now. It's addressing the mind state, because you say how young is youth. I'm looking at adults who are not growing up. When you're going to have successive generations. We're going on our third generation that's been into growing up on gangster rap and stripper rap, thug rap, just all the negative things that can be chronicled, and we consider them as part of society, but not the default, because anything that's not that these days is looked at as an outlier, and I think that's really strange, because I don't carry that. I didn't grow up like that. I grew up in the hood. I had the same story many other people had. A lot of my friends didn't make it. My best friend died on his birthday at 18, 2 days before my birthday. Like I had a lot of those same experiences. But as I grew as an adult, I'm looking at things and I'm able to discern certain things. I know what entertainment is. I know what's not working for our community. A lot of us don't. I work in the schools through the organization that I work with, primarily Words, Beats, and Life. And I teach DJ courses, and part of what I got to do is I got to teach them the fundamentals of DJing on a skill level, but I also talk about music, because oftentimes I'm giving them background on like how hip hop started. So I'm talking about breaks and things like that, but I also leave the conversation open for the bridge to be built, so I can understand where their minds are as far as what they want to get into, what they want to play, stuff like that. So I'm getting like first level, like ground floor feedback on what's going on in the minds of the kids, and the same records that the kids are going crazy over, which are very violent, hypersexual, hypermasculine, are the same records that the teachers come in and want to party to when they hear me teaching them something. I'm showing them a blend, and it's a Lil Durk record, and one of his ops, and they, the record's playing, and I'm listening and I'm observing and I'm learning, like, this is what you guys are living your fantasies out through at 12 years old, 11 years old, 6th and 7th grade. And the teachers are coming in, hey, party, and wanting to rock with the joints. And I'm like, yo, yeah, that's a problem. You know what I mean? That's a problem. Like that conversation isn't even given even a level of division for the teachers to be adults and be, not, even if you like it, you know what's going on in the content. You know what I mean? Like, those are conversations. I think ultimately, when we talk about this war, it's been going on since, and you're right about it being a broader thing. It's not just hip hop, but if we're going to talk about hip hop, it's been going on at least since the late 80s, early 90s, when it became very apparent that things, they didn't want the Biz Markies and the Jazzy Jeffs and the U.M.Cs and the Far Sides to succeed alongside the Dog Pounds and the Snoops and the Biggies. You know what I mean? Like, Kool Kim is correct. I remember that Source magazine where they dissed the U.M.Cs for being happy. I remember the Source magazine when they dissed Ice-T, Chuck D, Ice Cube for, I can't remember what exactly it was, but it was something going on in your content. They dissed the music in our Message album. I remember all of that. And it's been something that I feel has been it's been an irresponsible conversation at a certain point where we're not addressing the larger consciousness when talking about how this thing has been affecting these generations. That's one part of it. I mean, I don't want to get too more deep into that because that was like 5, 10, 15 minutes ago in the conversation, but I did want to kind of get that in there when you were talking about that, because I do think that's the thing. I talk about that a lot. Let's talk to the adults as much as we're trying to address these kids. Let's talk to the adults. That's the one thing. The other thing is we're talking about connecting the dots on organizations and things like that. A lot of times it comes down to believing in something and getting it funded. That's what a lot of it comes down to. If we can make it popular, look, Black Panther was a $1 billion success. Wakanda is what we're looking for. You know what I mean? Like, if we would fund Wakanda. That's how I feel about that. We would fund Wakanda if Wakanda was made, was made for us, if you kind of get what I'm saying. So I believe that we have the power. We know we have the power. We need to maintain the idea that it's not going to, in reality, it's not going to happen with this big fell swoop. It's going to be the smaller organizations building with the next one and building with the next one. Rap Station being something that, I listen to from time to time. You have something that has an audience. Cool Kim, you have an audience. Everybody on this panel has an audience. Our conversation need to continue outside of this, not on the celebrity side, on the coalition building side. So that's how it doesn't necessarily, it won't always be something that people are going to immediately recognize. I think it may be a slower burn, but it has to happen somehow. And I think that's one of the ways it's going to happen. We got to recognize that it's not going to always be through celebrity. At some point, some celebrities are going to come and endorse what's going on, but we still got to do the work.
Yeah.
I've been working in organizations for 20 years. We still got to do the work.
Yes, sir.
So, brother Aton.
Hold on, brother Shahi. One quick second. I just want to, before I get to you, there's a couple of things I wanted to bring up. One, let's think about this for a second. RBI, you mentioned something about the adults and the youth. What I find interesting that today, some of your biggest bankable hip hop stars all come from gangster rap. Ice-T, Ice Cube, you name it. Who else? Dr. Dre came out of NWA. You can name them. Name the biggest bankable stars.
50 Cent.
50 Cent.
Snoop
Dogg. It's
you
like,
can keep going. You can
keep going. But the point is, though, this is not by accident.
The climate is familiar. It's just that the climate is familiar. The NIGGER, I don't care which way you spell it, has been a popular sales initiative, profit motive ever since we stepped off the boat.
And not only is it familiar, it's comfortable.
It's comfortable
for the enemy to propagate that, because it's not a threat for them at all. That whole gangster image thing, it doesn't threaten them at all.
We keep putting it on the enemy,
Anthony,
but the enemy doing it.
Now, I'm getting to you, brother Shahi, real quick. And another thing I wanted to mention too about the next step or the mobilization or Wakanda, like brother mentioned, the Nation of Islam, we have a program called Muhammad's Economic Blueprint. The idea is to generate enough funds to buy land for us to separate, because we can never get the power that we talk about and talking about, Kim. We can't give that unless we actually have infrastructure. You can't have infrastructure unless you actually have land that you can build on. And that's some of the things that we've been trying to do or set up. Now, to you, brother Shahid, before you talk, I had a question for you, and that is, the minister said that drugs, a certain type of drug was introduced into the Black community, specifically crack cocaine. He didn't mention it by name, but that's what he was talking about. After Reagan and Bush received financing by Prince Bandar of Saudi Arabia, and that Freeway Rick Ross was an unwitting co-conspirator in the so-called war against drugs. What impact did crack have on hip hop culture and Black youth? And I wanted you to address that because of your co-production of the VH1 rock doc, Planet Rock, dealing with crack cocaine.
If anybody hasn't seen that documentary on VH1, it ran from 2011 to 2013. We were up for 2 Emmys. My good brother, comrade and friend, AZ Faison, who wrote the script for Paid in Full, actually he wanted to call it Trapped, because he felt like he had been trapped in the drug game in Harlem, and Allah God freed him, by which way he knew not when he was shot, almost lost his life in '87. But between Miramax and Rockefeller Films, which was headed up by Jay-Z and Damon Dash, they changed the name and kind of watered down the whole concept of whatever. I'm gonna address your question, but I wanted to address what you first said about the Black Panthers real quick and talk about how the Crips came out of the Black Panthers. They were junior Black Panthers. Now, the Black Panthers go back to the late 60s into the 70s, again, at the conception of hip hop. And I just want to mention the fact that there were rappers that were specifically murdered because they were conscious, social, political geniuses. Tupac, who was affiliated with gangster rap on the West Coast, but came from the East Coast, was the son of a Black Panther whose stepfather, Matula Shakur, was BLA, Black Liberation Army, Black Panther. He was a threat. All right, so let's talk about this crack thing for a second. Let's crack some atoms. The CIA asset that recruited Freeway Rick Ross in LA. Freeway Rick Ross didn't know who this dude really was. He just looked at him as a major plug. He's like, man, I'm making all this money on the streets. Every time I get stopped by the cops, ain't nobody keeping me locked down. What's going on? He didn't realize that he had been green lighted all the way up to the Oval Office and didn't realize it until he got locked up eventually. And by the time he got locked up, he had not just mass-produced crack, which is a cheaper form of cocaine, and you get very addicted to it. It spread not only up and down the West Coast, but across the United States. And he had Bloods and Crips. Of course, let's remember the Crips came out of the Black Panthers, and they were designed to protect the Black community. This is war. The Black Panthers and the Crips were protecting Black folks in our communities from white folks that were doing what the kid just did down there in Raleigh, North Carolina. All right. So here comes FBI counterintelligence program. This is war. This ain't no semantics. This is the real thing. They killed Fred Hampton, right? Gunned him down. They killed Clarence 13th X, who started the 5%. And out of the 5% came Wu-Tang and Big Daddy Kane and King Son and Bahamadia. And I mean, the list goes on and on. They put Rick Ross on. He puts the Crips on, because this is what pulled the Crips away from being guardians of our community. Drugs and money. Out of the Crips came the Bloods. And out of the Crips and the Bloods came warfare between them because they're fighting over what? Money. Now, here comes the trumpet that I talked about in the beginning. The trumpet of truth. The minister traveling around the country, stop the killing tours as he's rebuilding the nation. We have to be able to put all these scenes together and see what's really going on, because we are all soldiers in a war, taking commands, whether we are commanding officers, private soldiers. We don't realize that we're all a part of this, whether we realize it or not. All right. So the CIA is feeding him crack. He's making millions of dollars. That stuff is traveling across the country. Now, I grew up in New York City. I came up in Islam initially among the 5%, and I went into the Nation of Islam as I started a family. But as I came up among the gods, some of my partners were in that world selling drugs, right? I'm not going to name no names, but of course, you know Supreme, you know some of the bigger names. Who you don't know were the bosses behind the scenes, the Furtado brothers, who were making $15 million a week, while everybody else was making $15 million a year. All right. Freeway Rick Ross was a boss, selling all his drugs for who? The CIA, who were funding a guerrilla war that he knew nothing about. He didn't know he was working for the United States government to do what? Distribute drugs in our community, get our people hooked, develop a whole generation of crack babies. And now you have all these children that are diagnosed with HDAD and
bipolar, this and that. It's all biological, chemical warfare, and a lot of our rappers have been mysteriously murdered. Big L in Harlem murdered. Tupac in Vegas murdered. Biggie Smalls in LA. As a matter of fact, one of my older righteous brothers, Sean T, who used to run with Puffy and them, and he had history in the streets going all the way back to the early 70s. He was a Junior 7 Crown and then ran with Minister Law out of Brooklyn. Anybody know who Minister Law is knows Brooklyn history. And these were notorious people. He was in the car in back of Biggie when Biggie was shot. He said it was a small green car that drove up to the side and blasted him. Now, if the FBI are following the rappers and they taking pictures and video footage, you mean to tell me you don't know who killed Biggie? You mean to tell me you don't know who killed Tupac? You know who killed Tupac because Tupac was like a junior panther. So all of these pieces fit together because the business, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, is warfare. So you cutting into the white man's pockets, and will you understand that BlackRock, the big financial conglomerate that controls private prisons, that owns Wells Fargo and all these other big banks, Bank of America, all these banks that we go to when we still putting our money in. Because Muhammad's bank, when in the nation in the first resurrection, we had banks. But we got to get that back. We have to pool our resources. So I'm cutting it short because I see my brother's hand up, but we got to pull it together. We have to.
You're from Brooklyn, Brother Shaheed, right?
Yes, sir.
I don't know how old you are, but listen, I'm gonna ask you a real clear question. I got 5 years on you, but I'm saying I remember but I'm saying I got an absolute beginning, and everybody on this panel could ask it. You don't have no super drug game without a gun game. Do you remember the first time you saw a gun in your neighborhood?
Yes.
What year?
69, 70.
When's the last time you saw like gun like more than once or twice? Like kind of like, okay, 3 people had different guns. 3 different people had guns.
Okay, so I'm in the Maryland area now, but I go home a lot.
The first time you seen it, you was like, oh. Yeah. Because we have an absolute area when it happened. It started fade from around 74, 75 up into by 78, 79. And that's when you was hearing about Uptown and Nicky Barnes and you know, I'm on Long Island, so you got what's happening in Queens bleeding out there. And this is where they putting, you know, all the women they with, the families, they putting them in Nassau. Because there was a big murder at the Earth, Wind and Fire concert in 75, and there was a murder on the Coliseum, you know, grounds. And then later on, it was like, oh yeah, it was like kind of like Black Syndicate related. But around that time, because you ain't got no super drug game without a gun game to protect it. That in the beginning, when up to that time, young heads never looked at an older head like, F you, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Never. Because what could supposed to happen now? Older heads congregated more, they was bigger, and they bust that ass. You got an ass whipping. So either, you know, you're not coming back with nothing. So either like, okay, I'm gonna avoid them or maybe hopefully be part of that clique. But the gun game and the disappearance of cats, when the next level of drugs, they start locking cats up for, you know, little drug here, or you touching cocaine. Oh, you got, you know, I mean, 77, 78, 76, 79, which coincidentally goes into even hip hop having muscle, but also going to those gigs in Brooklyn and Queens and a little bit of the Bronx, not a lot of the Bronx, although it was across the bridge. I'm 17, 18, we drove everywhere. Security gets different because security was get a couple of big dudes. The most a cat gonna do is put out a knife. Nobody gonna really bring no gun here. I mean, they want a party gotta happen, right? Change in 77, 78, 79. And a reason I say this is that the momentum of the drug and the gun game at the same time with this sparking, and I didn't know what happened in LA at the same. Coincidentally, when we found out about Freeway Ricky Ross and all that in LA. It was happening at the same time, but you know, that's 3,000 miles away. I mean, all we know is what's happening. And I'm 18, 19 years old, and I'm seeing this going on. And I'm like saying, yo, I didn't see a gun in 74. How did, boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden, in a little country square mile town like Roosevelt, summer of 79, 6 people get killed. And we like, how you get a gun? That's the biggest question. How did they get a gun? It wasn't like how they got the drugs, because they stopped weed for 2 years. Because the cats that did like to, you know, smoke some weed, all of a sudden they couldn't get no weed. And whatever game was happening is like cats would say, you know what? I ain't got no weed, but I got cocaine. And the first wave of cats that wanted to give it away free, they got rejected because cats didn't want to do no cocaine. I'm like, I'm not, you know, Superfly left a bad taste in people's mouth, although cats was shooting up and cats was doing that. Cats were like, yo, man, I don't want to be a junkie, because I know my uncle, he a junkie. And they didn't, you know, they thought cocaine, shooting up was all the same thing, but they took the weed off the street. And the deal is, when little of them were there, they were older cats, was like, okay, I ain't got no, but I got this. And they gave it away for free. Okay, the next time they come around, no, I ain't got it, but y'all, I'll take a little of that cocaine. That was the introduction. But at the same time, there was this thing like, damn, man, so how are they getting these guns, man? Because if you're getting more money, then they know that, okay, you got to protect your game with something. This is like, you getting real money now. And that's when the younger heads, I remember like yesterday, younger heads is looking at somebody, might have did a little time coming out. He's like, man, that old nigga ain't gonna tell me nothing. I got this. And that's 1978, 79. So if we're talking about the epidemic by 1995, the reason why the Million Man March was so significant, because for one day, it was young heads is looking at older heads, and older heads is looking at young heads for the first time in a long time and saying, okay, we all here together. It was not one incident. A brother didn't piss on a tree that day.
No, sir.
And of course, immediately after we heard clapback was like, oh man, I thought the Million Man March was supposed to do something and something like that. That wasn't the point. The point was, can we leave there and at least organize? And like Kool Kim was saying, yo, organization is like 3 people working together. That's it. You're an organization. You don't need 100 people. You need people kind of like saying, we going in this direction. I don't know how to count well, and I don't even know how to spell well. But my person over there to the right can spell, and my person to the left can count. We could probably come up with something because I could create. This was beyond hip hop, but hip hop was the common language that helped bring us all. Hip hop was the promotional tool, really. But you know, promotion could go 2 ways. Yeah, it was all propaganda, because the propaganda got to go against the propaganda. What's the agenda of the other side?
Well, I think
the other side is to keep us apart.
Hip hop gave us a way to communicate.
Yes, sir.
We had before, like that was our language of communication in our community, right? Hip hop, the slang. They call it slang, but that's how we calmed each other down. That's how we connected with each other from different levels of consciousness. Through our words and our hip hop. I just, you know, and you talk about guns. I remember in 1979, that's the first time I ever saw a gun. And I was with the Assalam brothers at that time. 78, actually, I was with the Assalam brothers, and we had a house party. And I'm a teenager, and the guy was like, "Here, take this and stand at the door." I was like, "Are you out of your mind? Like, why am I? First of all, why am I holding this?" And it didn't even seem real to me. Right, as a teenager, I was like, I'm not. Why am I holding that gun? No one's coming here to rob a $1 party. And then my friend, I had 2 friends. His name was Stanley and Peanut, who are from the Bronx. Know that, go to Bronx River. That's number 1. So it was the Black Spades. This guy, he from the Black Spades. You know, they carry guns.
Mm-hmm.
And so back then it wasn't about gold chains, it was about silver chains. So you had your silver chains back then, and they stole my friend's silver chain when he went across the bridge. And he told them, like, anybody from Bronx River come across the bridge, they're gonna have to pay, because the only way you get across the bridge, you had to either walk or take the bus. Right. So and we were right on 174th Street and on Hoe Avenue, right where the Boys Club was. So, you know, anyway, he got killed. That was the first person that I ever knew that died from getting shot. And that was in 1978, 79. And I was I had no knowledge of guns or people getting killed. But that was my first introduction to that. And, you know, it was also when the culture was being inundated from the gangs were coming over to the culture of hip hop at that particular time. So that was a really big deal. And you talked about weed and drugs, like, so in our community, the gangs did protect the community. So they made sure that everyone who lived on the block was safe. They also never did like disruptive things in front of the elders. Like they would help your grandmother with the bags, walk into the building. So it was a real sense of community. They will steal your lead jacket, but you know, now and then that's what it was. They steal your lead jacket, but you know, lead jackets were like $5 at the time. So that was my introduction to that. But like from the culture and the gangs and the drugs, like, but I remember in 1986, I was sitting in a van with some of my peers, and they pulled out this device. It looked like it looked like anyway, they lit the thing on fire underneath it. They had like coils, they dipped the coils in alcohol, lifted up there, and they put these little rocks in this pipe. And it was like, yo, AD, this is the new drug. And you know me, who I am, I was like, first of all, I said, I don't do drugs. I've never done drugs. I said, but that stuff that you're taking right there is gonna kill you. And they like went off on me. They was like, you're killing my high, you're killing my high. But that was the introduction into crack in 1986 for me, seeing my MC brothers do crack. And it was like, it was weird to me because I never did drugs, but it was like, that was my introduction to crack. So in hip hop, I grew in the culture as a young man, being introduced to most of the things in, you know, street life, basically. And drugs were a major part of it. And we talked about, Kool Kim was talking about like that connection. So drugs destroyed generations of people. This is what I've learned about the Caucasoids on this country. They know how to destroy generations. They don't just kill the people or destroy the people that's in front of them. They go through generation. They understand DNA. They understand breeding. So that's what I got from that whole thing. That's all I want.
Real quick, Kim, before you go, we do have a question from the audience. I'll let you go first, Kim, but right after you, there's a question from the audience, and Angela you have something you need to say, Angela? She wants to speak too. So go ahead, Kim.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to point out, AD and Chuck, and matter of fact, all the panelists, I want to see if anybody remembers this the way I remember it. Yo, you remember when crack was the word? Crack is the word. Remember that? Remember it was like, yo, crack was what's up. Like crack was up.
Kim,
like, that's the funny thing that we forget. That there was this span of the quick moment in it, right? Where it was like, yo, I got them krills, I got that crack. Like it was a thing. And it was for 1 second, it was like they try to market it as sexy, and they use hip hop music to try to promote that message, right? And then right on the heels of that, right? Another one of our hip hop heroes comes through, a group of heroes, in fact, Brand Nubians. Right. And they had that, hey, yo, Chris, did you hear what Little Sis said? What? Crack is the word. I looked and shook my head and said, you mess with crack, you better be while I'm dead. Because if I ever catch you, you're going to be dead. All my friends do it. I said, your friend's a joke. I told them plain and simple. The smoking coke is no joke. This was how like, this is our hip hop music, right? Like, this is what we've got, right? And when we start remembering this, because right on that, right, when that happened, if we remember, that's when you started seeing this really strong concerted rollout from the hood. I'm not talking about the Nancy Reagan clown business. From the hood, where it was like crack is whack. It was hip hop that led the charge to change that dynamic when the corporations try to use it to further subvert us. Now, why I'm saying that, and I just want to use this brief moment before we transition to the other questions, to just tap into a little bit of solutions, because we talked a lot about the difficulties of what we're looking at. How about a solution or two so that we don't feel like all hope is lost? And this is one of the reasons why this is the first panel that I've been on since I was NOIL, and the panels were the reason I stopped being NOIL, was because I have, I know that people are seriously hurting and seriously confused and seriously scared. You understand? And we done ginned up so many boogeymen in our everyday conversations that people are in a state of anxiety. You dig? And so what happens is we're not providing any solutions for them that are real. We're giving them talking points. Brother, when you come out here, you got to stand up, because the black man got to stand together. Oh, right on, brother. Talk it up. Pick up. Like, that's useless, because it's just like marching. When you go on them long old marches and you then said all of what you had to say and hoot and hollered, then you get home, you're exhausted from actually marching. So you have this sense of accomplishment. However, nothing has changed, because the community needed pointed action. So here's some pointed action. One of the things that we have to do as elders, we have to embrace the fact that we are not our parents. What does that mean? Our parents grew up listening to bebop and jazz and Count Basie and, all that Otis Redding and, all that solid soul doo-wop. They grew up in an entirely different reality than ours. We were the generation that brought in this we went from analog to digital. We're the generation that brought the world there. We're the ones that was the first ones with the ColecoVision and the comic and the cartoon, and the computers and the Ataris and the televisions. We were the ones. We were the ones with the first internet in the form of the party line. You understand? Everybody on the phone. What's up? It's so-and-so in the house. You heard? We were the ones that did that. We were the ones that created a billion-dollar industry, and yet somehow or another, we've reached 40, 50, 60, and now we acting like we don't know how to be those innovators. And yet every day we're still innovating. But what we're not doing it fly, we're not doing it together, right? And we're not doing it for them babies, because we're not showing the babies where the end point is. Now, when the day comes, I got to sit up for this. When the day comes, right, that the babies, the thing that we're doing, right, and they like, yo, OG, I'm trying to be like you, the war's won. The war that everybody fancies themselves being in is won. This music has the most immature African in all of the diaspora speaking to the entire world. The most immature. We still gaining knowledge of self. We still coming into self. We still building culture. We still trying to have understanding. We still facing great deals of impression. We've been displaced. The most immature African in the world is speaking to the entire world. And of the most immature African, they take the most immature of the immature African. The kids. They won't let a grown man talk to the kids. Because if I start rhyming to kids and start talking to them, in the rhymes that I'm saying, the rhymes that I'm writing right now, that I do on Instagram right now, it's all knowledge. It's lessons. Love unselfishly, love courageous, love outrageous with a love for the ages. Never be afraid from your heart, because sometimes love hurts, but that's how you know love works. These are rhymes I'm writing now.
Right.
Giving instructions. They don't want that to happen. What do we have to do? We have to make that happen. There was upwards of 50 plus people on this live that we're doing right now. If that same 50 people follow each of the principles in this discussion, it's more strength. If that same 50 people shared good music, good culture, good art, like we used to with our music, y'all got complacent. Y'all have gotten complacent because you used to be up at 1 o'clock at night making your own pause tapes. Now you on here talking about hip hop dead. What happened to the real hip hop? Your favorite rappers are putting out great music, positive, conscious, evolved music, and you don't even know because you're still looking to the same outlets that already told you they have nothing for you. You're still looking there. So let's stop looking in those outlets and start going back to being true hip hoppers, because it's the fans that we need more than anything else. It ain't the artists that are selling us out. Ain't nobody selling, ain't no artist selling nobody out. It's
Yeah,
the
they out.
fans.
The fans are out there, man. Like chiming back in for a second, you know, I still play music on the radio. You know, even when I'm in the schools, I'm introducing other things to people who I consider to be my audience. You just got to be diligent about it. There's no magic potion for it. We know what we're up against, but it's 300, Army of 300, man.
We've got to be clear the difference between an anecdotal experience and a general one. Anecdotally, we're all having these very beautiful hip hop experiences within our very microcosm, you know, within our ecosystem. But we also know in the larger picture that our culture has gone errant. It's gone errant, one, because the parents are not showing the children a life worth living after 25.
Well, I like to ask a question. Yo, sure. DXT.
Yes, sir.
Sister Angela, how does the Million Man March in 1995, how does that actually be remembered in the metaverse? When they're ushering one by one into the metaverse as individuals. And then when you get into the metaverse as an individual, you're joining another billion-person march of something else.
Well, the first thing that we have to actually learn is that we're not actually at war. We are being attacked. And warfare is when you respond to the attack. And so, yeah, we've been talking a lot for generations about it.
That march was our response to that war. That was a response.
That was the first real response to warfare, and since has been the Million Man March. There's a word, and bear with me, it's called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. And what it's saying is that when you change a person's language, you also are rewiring their brain computer. And we have these conversations constantly about the situation that we're in. And we're using a language that I have now come to the conclusion that we don't totally understand how it actually works because of this system of repetition that we keep going through. And we're constantly shock tested by the people who are attacking us. And we respond the same way. One of the greatest moments in my life was to see all of those brothers out there. And it shows that there is a potential that we have, and it is expressed in the earliest stages of what we're calling hip hop. What's hip hop is an ancient expression that is being revisited in our time. And most people use this term created. Like I said, this is the English language, which severs our umbilical to the origins of that expression. We have to connect to who we are because someone else has a better understanding of that than we do at this time. And in order for, well, put it this way, they wouldn't do what they're doing if that wasn't true. You see what I'm saying? And so it's pretty obvious that we are playing along the tune that they've written for us. And until we stop and look at the musicians in the band and recognize we know the song they're going to play once we know who's playing in the band, we're going to continue to do this cycle that we are caught in. So it will happen here and in the metaverse.
Also, I don't mean to cut anybody off, but D, you got to let everybody know what you told me. Well, you always tell me something 20 years ago about social farming.
Yeah, well,
because you know I stole that from you, but I
well, hey, listen, man, you didn't steal it from me. I gave it to you.
Uh-oh.
Well, that's just another way of saying social engineering. And so every few years we have an event that brings all of us out and we come up with a new song to sing. someone gets arrested, and then we all go home, and nothing changes. And then a few years later, something happens, and we come out and we march and we, whose streets? Our streets, no justice, no peace. Hands up, don't shoot. We have a whole album now of these songs, but nothing changes. And so we are playing in a system that constantly turns us back to square one without any adjustments, because we use the term war, but that's not what's happening. We have to respond to make it a war. We're reacting to events, and then we go home, and maybe somebody gets a TV show or something like that. But once we respond to it, because we're using a monetary system also that is controlled and created by the same people. Now, if it fell out of the sky and it all landed in Paris, then I get it, but it's being printed by a machine. So ultimately, the means of exchange for goods and services, we have to create our own way of doing that, because everything will be circumvented if we don't, no matter what you do. So to understand warfare is to understand what it is. You got to respond to it to make it war. We're being attacked, and we're just adjusting to each level of the attacks.
Real quick. To your point about language, DXT, we have a lesson in our Supreme Wisdom that says, speak the language well because she knows all about you. So that you're absolutely right. You know, we gotta know the language that we're speaking and speak it well, because that one you're speaking against knows the language better than you do.
And the law.
It knows you better than you know yourself.
And brother A, and the law.
And the law, right. And which doesn't necessarily apply to them, but it definitely applies to us.
But
Sister Angela got a hand raised.
Well, again, it's in the language. So it doesn't apply because you're being attacked. Well, we say we're at war, and we're not. We're being attacked. We have to respond to the attack.
Tomato, potato, potato.
No, if you are attacked and you respond to that attack, then you're fighting back. If you're adjusting.
I'll let Sister Angela go, but again, I'm going back to the point. Well, what is our response? What should our response be? I want
to say that
you already laid it out.
It could be a collective response, but it has to be a collective commitment, right? A lot of people do a lot of talking, right? But there's no commitment. I can honestly say that, and sometimes we make this as an individual. Well, what have you done? The question I always ask people, what have you done for someone else today? That's the first question that I always ask people. And most of them said nothing, because we live in a very, 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 very selfish consciousness and subconsciousness.
It's called rugged individualism.
Well, some of us did not graduate from this university. All right, let's be clear on that.
I got that from you.
I'm gonna steal that from you, brother.
I'm gonna give it to you, and I got it.
Thank you.
Hey, Tony, I say that because that's important to me. We talked about that before. But on a very serious note, is that most of us live in fear. Right? We live in fear. Everyone has a fear of something. So when I was saying earlier, like I'm 9 years old every day inside of myself, because at 9 years old, I don't know what fear is. I could jump off a tape. I could jump out a window. I'm not afraid to hurt myself because I wasn't taught to be afraid. And that's what, in order for us to do that, we have to think that way. And then if you're going to be committed to something, at some point, what are you willing to sacrifice? Right? Because ultimately change is not only physical, but it's also spiritual, right? So in order for you to make a change, you have to be committed. And most people will never be there because they can't even make a change to the items that they eat every day. But anyway, so I'm A-Tone, please take it.
Let me say one last thing that I want to say, that
Yes, sir.
You know, we are a very, very special people. You know, we are expressing through our DNA an expression that circles the world time after time, generation after generation. And in our time, we're using a language to define it, and it's become known as hip hop. This is an ancient expression, and it generates at the beginning of our consciousness. When it stirs up, we do these things and pow, here it is. But if you look back, go back in time, you'll see that this expression is responsible for some of the greatest achievements on this planet, some of the greatest things that ever happened. And part of the attack part is to keep you severed from that connection. These people are very much aware of the potential of melanated people on this planet. They are very aware of that. And so their game plan is to guarantee the predictable outcome of our behavior from generation to generation, to make sure that today, this expression that has been incorporated and now redistributed to the same people for a price, when it is an expression that comes from our genes, from within us. We have fallen into these traps of corporate and music entertainment business and all of these things. These are extractions of our cultural wealth that we are chasing after our own abilities. And so it's just a very important thing now to take a closer look at what it really is. Even within, I'm from the Bronx. I'm a first generation B-boy, first generation. Yeah. And so I was there when these things started to cultivate. But yes, I remember seeing them before we started coming up with terminology for these things.
But DST,
I was there before that.
DST, you're not from the Bronx. You're from your mother's womb, my brother.
Well,
right?
Okay.
Can't argue with that.
Hey, listen, man, this is a 400-year-old problem that I have, and I'm trying to work it out. Okay. And so, so, you know, we have a serious situation that we got to deal with. And that is, we ourselves are spewing the misnomers of what it is that we're doing through the language,
yes,
the terminology. And so we're not connecting to who we are. That is, we are severing our umbilical by doing that. And we have to step back from that, because as long as we're doing that, they're not going to change anything when you're already going down the wrong road. If someone's never treated you right, they're damn sure not going to teach you right. And so it's very important for us to take a step back now. The Million Man March was one of the greatest opportunities, and it still is, because it happened. So if it happened once before, it can happen again, and it can happen with a better understanding. That was a step. That was a step towards. And just look at the time between it. That's still a step forward. Maybe it took this long to truly understand what that really represents.
Yeah, you know,
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, can we
there's something important that you're saying that I like to tap in real fast. I'll make my statement brief.
Can we after you did it real quick, can we let Sister
Yes, sir.
She's been very patient.
It's very important that that what you said is that's a big deal. That one of the things that I think we have to do right now, to affect change, is that we have to reach out and we got to get on a swivel, because I think a lot of times we having conversations about conditions that we really not hip to. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yo, fam, you know, you're talking about stuff, you're not really hip. Like, you actually insulting cats because they out there grinding, and, you know, like that cat's there, he's working. That dude over there, he's been working without nobody helping them for years. And because that's been me, like that's literally been my experience. In fact, I can go as far as saying at the time when I was NOIL, the only artist that ever even considered working with me, ever worked with me at all, was Chuck D. That was the first person in my entire career that I'd ever done a collaborative project with. And when you talk about and the way that Chuck engaged it, right? It was actually my introduction to Johnny Juice, who's become a lifelong friend. And has worked with me on a myriad amount of things that I've done. The way Chuck engaged it was from a place of such beauty and almost very nonchalant, casually, like, oh yeah, I got you, no problem. Boop. Oh, there he goes. Oh, bucket list, right? But what that did for me as an artist at the time, and I don't know if Chuck has had the same experiences because you were corporate endorsed in the form of being signed to a major label, not in the message, you know what I mean? For me, I was independent. So I was like, anything goes. They were just doing anything they wanted to me. Like I used to get the weird phone calls, the death threats. I had nobody, just me, my wife, and my 3 kids. And to be very honest with y'all, and A-Tone could tell you because he know me personally, it was a scary time. It was a lonely time. You understand? And I felt put in a very poor position, and no one would help me. I couldn't even make money doing what I was doing. You see what I'm saying? Standing up for our people. It was the worst time of my life. I'll go as far as saying I almost regret ever having done any of it because of what I got from the people and how bad it was. And I'm almost hateful that I have to be very mindful of how I talk about these conversations because I've tried not to let my bitterness emerge and then make myself unpalatable to listen to. But the experience that I had was so hurtful and harmful because nobody would help me. And I was standing up the strongest at the time. When you talk about woke culture, it's me. You understand? I'm woke culture. I did that. And I was by myself and I got my ass kicked and there was nobody that would help me. There was no insight. There was no knowledge. There was no. And so if we my response to that experience was not to be upset. My response was PEMG, where I had 40 young people in a youth mentoring program, teaching them hip hop from a fundamental level, culturally, as well as the industry, so that they had an opportunity to have jobs, and developed a program called Cypher Sessions, where I had over 200 young people coming through to the NAACP, the Urban League locally in Staten Island, rapping. And I would have some Supernova Slam and Shaheen came through to rhyme with the babies, and we stopped gang violence. We stopped, matter of fact, Pop the Brown Hornet's son almost got killed. I was able to stop his child from being killed on the strength of my outreach, because what I had found out for a fact that I already knew for true was that these babies, if you build it, they will come. If you engage them, they will come. They love us and they miss us. And I'm going to tell you something. You notice that a kid can call a woman, whomever that woman he meets, he can call her mommy. You know what I'm saying? He go, you know, like you ever had one of your kids come and visit, and they meet you and your wife, and they see your wife like, hi, Miss John, hey mama, you know, so and so, and then they see you and like, hey, how you doing? Because the acknowledgement of father energy is such a delicate thing, and as a people, and the Million Man March taught us this.
Right.
The development is so poor that people can't come off of that. Yo, what up, Dad? Yo, what up, Pop? OG, we got to be OG, original gangster. So one of the things that we can do on a very immediate level is go and engage. Right now, the work that D-Nice is doing with Club CQ, it's the perfect work for our generation. Go and engage. The work that the brother Mickey Fax is doing, he's got a whole little hip hop school, and he's having artists come on and giving classes. Yo, let me call up Mickey and be like, yo, Mickey, I just spoke with Chuck D on this thing. I just talked to Grandmaster DXT. I just talked to Easy. I just talked to all these brothers in this live. Yo, they said they'll come on because they want to engage. Wow. Wow. Yo, so-and-so, do you, I can't express to you. I cried when I got that verse from Chuck D. This is the man that told me move as a team, never move alone. But welcome to the Terror Dome. He galvanized me when no one was there for me. With no one. And he didn't even know he was doing it. So what if we consciously did that? What if we consciously said, yo, This is our culture. I'm not my parents. I didn't come up listening to doo-wop and bebop. I know I speak this slang. I talk that talk. I wear that style. I wear them outfits. I got my what y'all wearing I ain't got? How you what you into that I'm not into? You not into this boom bap like I'm into it? I'm into it all. What's up? Now let's vibe. We're not even vibing. We're positioning ourselves as our parents in this discussion. We're not positioning ourselves as literally a community that can literally pass the ball to our babies. We can literally put them on our shoulders. We can literally like, your son, come here, get on this mic. Let me hear that verse. And this can all be different. But we're not doing the work. We're being absentee fathers. We're being absentee mothers. And we're doing more talking than we're doing acting. You heard? And when the rubber meets the road, because when I had PEMG, and I don't know if you remember this, Tone, I was on Facebook and I was tagging racks of people. And I was like, yo, these kids are the future. These kids are so talented. These kids are so beautifully brilliant. They're not cursing in their rhymes. They're not representing nothing negative. Please help them. I went so far to say, yo, I swear on my life, I'll never rhyme again if you give these babies a chance. And no one gave them a chance. Not even the slightest consideration. And it was all the same people that be in all these conversations, having all these talks about what we going to do with the real hip hop. And there one of them would make the slightest behavioral adjustment to support the very things that they claim to love. And if we want to make a difference, one of the first things that we're going to have to do is stop BSing each other and sharing and rubbing each other nice on the back and speaking soft words in each other's ears with the platitudes, and be on some real individual rubber meets the road. This is my job. Let me go do what I'm supposed to do and stop talking all the time and go do the work. Because when you start doing the work, the ecosystem around you changes. When I lived in Maryland, I hadn't seen white people in so long that when my friend brought over his baby, we all sat around for an hour and a half, stunned looking at a little white baby because we hadn't seen white people in so long, because our reality had changed so significantly that white people had ceased to exist. That's how powerful changing your reality is. And we won't do anything. So if we serious after 2 hours of talk, boo, 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 3 hours and a half, if we serious, then when we walk away from this, we say, yo, what are the things I can do? I come from a generation where I had to mail letters, snail mail. I come from a generation where I had to learn the Dewey Decimal System. I come from a generation where we had the little rolling thing with the Xeroxes coming. I come from that generation where things were hard, signed forms in triplicate. Now I'm in a generation where all I gotta do is pick up this phone, whoop wop, boop bang. I can do everything, anything. I just posted my Instagram page on the chat. How many people added me on Instagram? Let me go look on Instagram right now. Let's see what the integrity of the people.
Brother Kill.
Angela.
0.
Sister Angela is still waiting to speak.
It's all this must come my Android right now, but no, I'm just saying no. But and I had this conversation in this last build that I had on another discussion. I was talking to them. I'm like, yo, fam, Cass is on here for 2.5 hours, 3.5 hours talking to you, filling your coffer, pouring into your cup. And now from the engager side, right? You're sitting there watching brothers who got entire lives like you do, got work in the morning like you do, build with you for 3.5 hours. And it hasn't crossed anyone's mind to be like, yo, let me follow these brothers. Let me tap into this knowledge. Let me stay connected. Let me not lose this build. What good is it? What good is it? What good is a Million Man March in this after the fact? What was the beautiful thing about Million Man March? What people never talk about. How many organizations exist right now that started then? I can tell you right now, Brothers Care exists because of that.
Let's
because of that. Blackbird Fly exists because of that. You see what I'm saying?
Right. I have a question.
What's going to exist because of this?
Go ahead, Sister Angela.
I'm sorry, sis. I'm sorry. I'm
No
passionate
problem.
about this stuff. I'm sorry, y'all.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for unmuting me, Anthony. But my question is, we're talking about the war, and I believe it's a war. The minister said it was a war, and he doesn't use just words lightly. He knows what words to use, and he's a master of the words. So if he says there's a war, then I believe it. And like Kool Kim was saying, when there's a war, you have opposing forces. So who is the enemy in this war? In the Nation of Islam, we're taught to recognize a hypocrite. When you see a hypocrite, they're not going to come to you and say, I'm a hypocrite on the shirt or on their forehead. They're going to come and they tickle your ear, but you know what signs to look for. So when we're using the word enemy, you know, if there's a war in hip hop, means there's an enemy somewhere. How do we recognize who that enemy is? Who is the enemy? So
Don't recognize it. I don't think you recognize an enemy unless you have a collective. And when you have a collective that's out there, then you can recognize the enemy, because it's a collective versus a collective that's out there that is the enemy. If you're an individual, the enemy could be a whole bunch of different vantage points. But yeah, this person's an enemy over there. Damn, the tax collector's an enemy. When you're individuals, you got a list of enemies. But when you're a collective, you're focused and say, you know what? This is immediately affecting all of us at the same damn time. Can we come together? And everybody said this, and Kim alluded to the beginning of this, which I said was really at the beginning, when the Million Man March and Minister Farrakhan fell back. He said, okay, listen, we need organizations. Then he spoke at the end. When I was right there, I said, this is a corralling point of everybody coming together as one, not as individuals only, but a collection of organizations taking individual. A big up also go to, you know, how this works. Easy AD years ago reached out to me. He says, look, I'm in the public health. Chuck, I think this would be a great organization. And he brought me in. He brought me into an organization that also gave me the idea to recognize other organizations and the strength of organizations, but it takes the individual to bring you into an organization. And then boom, that's one became two. And I think AD also brought about 10 or 15 other people in, and then some, but it doesn't happen without that. And we could spend our time going on and on and on and on and on. But I just think the me into we, flipping that the gravity and inertia of flipping that M to a W and turning it upside down is a mug, I tell you. But if without it, we don't have nothing at all. And did we actually turn the we, did we actually turn the me into we? And what happened immediately, if we wanted to just say, if we want to reduce this to a hip hop conversation in the 90s, y'all remember what happened? It was like I can get this, we could get the bag, we could bling it, you know, the whole, you know, and I'm not even gonna name names, but, you know, I could get individually rich by any means necessary. So I think a lot of situations like looking at what the Million Man March was like, you know what, do for self, yourself, come up and make sure you pull up your bootstraps and don't be broke and don't be poor. And that's the best way to go about making us go to the next level. And come on, for real, that right there, use that energy and misdirected it in the wrong way into an individual instead of collective. That's what I thought. It's my personal opinion.
Sister Angela, I would say that
go ahead.
The enemy, can I say this one thing?
Go ahead.
I would say that the enemy, you got to name the names. You got to have the courage to name the names. And this is why I love the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan so much. It's because he names the names, whether it's in the book Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, or whether the minister's giving a press conference. He is not afraid to name the ADL, to name the FBI, to go into J. Edgar Hoover's history, to go into Laya Cohen's contribution to some aspects of the destabilization of hip hop, and all the other names that have to be named in order to pinpoint who was the Jew? Who was the Jewish man's name that was in the hotel when Whitney Houston was murdered? I forget his name. It'll come back to me. He was
it Clive Davis?
Yes.
Yeah. But those, I think, but Brother Shaheed, those are the easy names to name.
But
but sometimes I say those are easy names to name, but the difficulty is a brother that is like right at the gateway. So those, you could name those names that nobody seems to know except for them. But then it's like, yo, you doing dirt with this devil, but I'm going to keep throwing rocks at that devil. But you doing dirt, I mean, we pull your coattail a bunch of different times, but you gooned out, you gooned up. So now it's a goon game. Well, I'll keep throwing rocks at that devil. And at the same time, you know, oh man, you know, you brought the brother out, man, and stuff like that. It's like, wow. So yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant by the name.
I feel like, you. What I'm saying is, I'm kind of like adding on to your cipher, because what I'm saying is that when you name those names, and there are people who don't know those names, like you, brother, I'm looking at all the books in back to you. I know you a well-read brother, Chuck D, man.
And they wallpaper.
I know your history. I know your history.
Zoom background.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm saying that I know you're a well-read brother, right? So what I'm saying is, when you name those names, then you can look at those certain people who look like us, who were in the industry, that run with these people, or that are in agreement with these people. They may smile on our face and talk our language and all that, but behind the scenes, they're like, yes, sir, I'm taking your command. Instead of, there was a whole bunch of us out there on that National Mall at the Million Man March, showing Puffy Combs, Biggie Smalls, Tupac, all kind of basketball players, NFL players, and movers and shakers. Michael Jackson, like your documentary said and documented, Sister Angela, Michael Jackson gave $100,000. A lot of people talk about Michael Jackson, oh, he's soft. And no, he is a team player and more gangster than a lot of brothers that do all of this, NYL. You know what I'm saying? And so what my point is that we have to continue to name the names and show the affiliations and show the blueprint and the charts, so that we can warn our children, like the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said in a speech one time. He talked about the beast with the eyes in the front and the eyes in the back. He said that's like the FBI knowing our history and knowing how to see the Nat Turners and the Dr. Collards and all the warriors that come up, right? He said, no, that child looked like a young Minister Farrakhan coming up. We're going to snuff him out. See, so we got to know their history like they know our history. We have to know names so that we know how to systematically snuff that crap out. You understand what I'm saying? And we ain't always got to discuss it publicly and say, well, we know all the names and here they are. No, I mean, we don't have to do that. We can have our own quiet, clandestine meetings. Last thing I'm gonna say, I'm a Q. I pledged Q in '84. I did what I did in 1989. I decodified the symbols. I broke them down. I saw how all the black frats are one. And I started. I used the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's blueprint. I started college lecture circuit way back in the day, and I was going around all the schools and having certain quiet meetings with my frat brothers and other groups. I was like, listen, this code is decodified. I did the same thing for the sororities, right? And my thing is, let us have our own quiet meetings, like they got their quiet meetings, Brother Chuck, right? And let's all network, because one of the things I did about an hour ago, I put my email address and my Instagram there just for anybody who wants to use it, right? Including the audience. Because if we have this type of networking, this is the part of our counter punch to the oppressor, is the fact that we can come together in these forums that Sister Angela and Brother Atone put together. They bring us together. This is a part of that, the punch of the Million Man March, where you saw 2 million black men out on that mall. That was a threat. After six years after the Million Man March, 9/11, an inside job was engineered where they stole all that money out of the basement of the World Trade Center they ain't never talk about, right? And blamed it on the Muslims and went to war, telling a bunch of lies, right? about Iraq having weapons of mass destruction. All that stuff has been proven to not be true. And Osama bin Laden was dead in February of 2001, something like that, but you still looking for him and saying that a task force went and killed him and threw him in the sea and all this, and those 6 special force dudes are dead now. Dead man don't tell no stories, right? But here we are in a meeting, Brother NOIL, Brother Easy AD, Brother Chuck D, Brother Grandmaster DXT. I used to listen to your music all the time when I was an undergrad at Syracuse University, man. I wanted to tell you this, brother. That kind of music kept us alive. Brother Easy AD. That kind of music, I was there from 82 to 86, and we didn't really have CDs and stuff to download. We had audio tapes, which, by the way, I still have in my archives. All right? That stuff kept us alive when hip hop wasn't commercialized. But what I'm saying is these meetings right here, I'm taking mental notes. And we need to continue to have these type of powwows, because this is a part of the solution that we take this, we document it, we put programs together, we can put commercials together, Brother NYR, brother, cartoon commercials or whatever. I remember a meeting that you were in, I don't know, man, it's about 20 years ago. It was something that happened right here in the DC area. And you were a part. It was a program that you were a part of.
It was our program. It was DC National Varsity Culture. Yeah, we had a art conference at Howard University.
We got to continue.
And NOIL and Professor Griff came for that.
And that's another brother. I've done joint lectures. I brought in 2009, man. I brought Professor Griff up to Syracuse. We did a joint lecture, and man, I wish we videotaped that thing, man, because Griff blew. He had the first picture he had up on the screen was the Baphomet. And man, that thing caught the students. They was like, what? And man, we went in so hard, man. All those students that were there, it so shocked them, but it woke them up.
Can I share this real quick? Just to go back to Angela's question. She said, who is the enemy? And I would add this, and it kind of touches on something that DXT mentioned earlier. And that is, we're taught the greatest knowledge that you can have is the knowledge of God, the knowledge of self, the knowledge of the enemy, and the knowledge of your environment. Now, it doesn't make any difference if we name names or we attack this one or that one if we don't have any knowledge of ourselves.
That's right.
Our ignorance of our own selves is what sets us up for destruction from the enemy, because we're our own worst enemy because of our lack of knowledge of ourselves. And then the enemy has a way in. If we really knew ourselves, the enemy wouldn't have that way in. So that's why it's like, I'm big on definitions. We did all this talking, we didn't even define what hip hop is. So that's part of, like you said, Kim, about misnomers, and you said as well, DXT, about misnomers. We're talking about, we're using terms, and we haven't even defined the terms yet. Like, for example, if I say hip hop, AD knows this, because we talk about it all the time. If I say hip hop, he knows I'm saying hip hop means peace, unity, love, and having fun via the art of the DJ, the MC, the B-boy, and the graffiti writer. He knows that that's what I mean. But if I hear someone else say hip hop, I may not know what they're talking about. I really may not know what they're talking about.
Well, wouldn't you say that and like I said, I in my discussions everywhere I go, I tell people, I said, listen, we as a people, we've always been creative people. So hip hop is a terminology. If we want to talk about words, and although DXT clearly said it's been there since the root and the soul of the soul and the DNA. But if we want to say when it became a broad term to kind of like signify something, we could say, all right, it's a term for our creativity that evolved in different ways in the 1970s. Okay, we want to say it that. But our creativity has been here eons, since the birth of what we know of the universe, right? Wouldn't you say that if you wanted to say the elements, if somebody broke down the elements, say, okay, hip hop are the elements. Okay, MC and DJ and graffiti and dance and breaking. But you could say musicianship, we've been that since the beginning of the heartbeat, you know. MC and vocalization, we're masters of many languages. And since we've had it, we say that if you want to say graffiti, going to hieroglyphics and beyond. And if you want to say, you know, breaking, that's dance culture. And that's the movement of these energies. So hip hop being a modern 20th century term at a particular time, evolving something out when we were deemed to be nothing at a particular time, which is in this country a lot of the time, you know, we could say, yes, that's hip hop, but hip hop has always been the energy to build and to grow and go forward. The energy of destruction has been something else. And I'm a firm believer there's something for everything and there's something for everybody. But it always would take a redefinition of okay, if you think this is hip hop, it's got to go back to the root of our creativity and our creativity to go forward. Now, I think a lot of people get it confused with rap music and they're like, well, it's rap music. And I tell people, well, you got to define rap music. Rap is vocal over music. It ain't a music. It's a vocal over music. Because if you go, okay, DXT is on some turntables or DJ RBI, if a person's picking up a mic and they decide to spit over the music they have, they're going to spit over the instrumental. Easy AD is going to be on the mic over the instrumental of music. He's not going to be on something that got a vocal underneath it most of the time. So these are definitions that when I talk to somebody young, it freezes, well, even old, it freezes them. When I talk to somebody from another genre, the words freeze them, like when, oh man, hip hop's not rock and roll. I said, yeah, but you don't know what rock is, and you don't even consider that we the roll. so I mean, when you throw the words right back at them and you freeze the adversaries, boom, we win in a battle of words. And that's one thing that MC had better do, win in a battle of words. Cool Kim will tell you, and AD and DXT, we are and Shaheed, we come from the seed or the flyest, hippest communicators on the planet Earth. In the 60s and 70s, I would just be amazed watching cats talk. Because number was cold. You looking at an uncle, he trying to get to this spot, the other spot. He can't catch OJ. He got to catch the train. He only got like 30 seconds to kick it. And as I'm a shorty listening to somebody spit, and he's like, yeah, baby, I got to get over there. Can you dig it, bro? Yo, man, oh, I'm out, baby. I'm cool in the gang. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, damn, can you say that again? My first travels around the country, I could just talk and people be like, yo, listen, can you just talk? And you say anything. I just like to hear y'all talk. And that's something that came out of what was considered nothing. The wit, the lingo, the slickness, the language stuff. And you put that on top of music too? Oh my God, it got something that matches the heartbeat of human beings. And that's what they recognize and say, yo, man, that's the DNA talking. We gotta commodify that. We gotta roboticize that somewhere because that is too infectious.
Right.
Real quick.
And for the record, and I don't know if and many of you know this, but the term hip hop itself was actually a pejorative at first. It was an insult. And it was directed at the B-boys. The older crowd did not appreciate us coming into the parties, rolling around on the floor. So they would say, hey man, get out of here with that hippity hoppity BS, you know? And we took offense to it at first. And so I was surprised when it became the front runner term to identify the expression. But it originally was an insult. And two people Actually, 3 people made it more popular amongst the younger people. But if anybody was growing up, like in my house where I heard the Last Poets as a child, there was the soldier story in there. Suleiman El Hadi did this poem, and he's doing hip, it'll have hop, hip, that's 72. You see what I'm saying? And so the term became more popular amongst the next generation through Cowboy and ultimately Starsky, Lovebug Starsky. And they made it a popular and more acceptable term in our time. I just wanted to get that in there. Historically, that's very important.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
But I did want to bring on my assistant real quick, which is my son, Assad. He said that there's a question. It's mostly been comments in the chat. So he said there's an actual question there. So Assad, would you better read the question?
Peace and blessings, family. The question is from Darlene Lewis. And they ask, would you all be willing to mentor youth and connect youth organizations together that are gaining great results?
Absolutely.
I mentor frat and my fraternity, Maker Sci Phi fraternity, and also the FOI. My brother, Grandmaster, man, I'll yield to you, man. Grandmix.
Yeah, well, we have an organization that we started a few years ago, but you know, the pandemic kind of put the brakes on us, but we're getting ready to rally back up. It's called Team Hip Hop. And Easy AD is one of the co-founders of it with myself. And I am Chevin, Said G, and Rhonda Supreme. And we're doing master classes with the youth on, there's 4 different members with 4 different disciplines. Easy AD can speak on what his contribution to the organization, but mine is I do master classes on what I do, the production, scoring films, programming, Pro Tools, you know, and I segue from those with the social issues becomes the conversation in the process of learning these techniques and technologies.
Well, I deal with the health aspect of the culture. I think a lot of times we do not focus on health until we get sick. So what I do is I like to work with young people because again, their mind is still developing. And if the information is easier to stick when you're a certain age, based on the science that I've learned. And so it's about health. So I do history of hip hop. I think it's important for us to always share the history of the culture, because I can share my history because I lived it. It's not like it's a third party. So I tell them my history from my point of reference because it's my point of reference. It doesn't mean that it's the correct. It's factual. It's my point of reference. So it happened to me. I see it in this way. So it's about the history of hip hop, and it's also about health. And I think that those two go hand in hand, because if you look at the trajectory of the culture, as in society of a brown person living on this planet, you have an expiration date. So that's important that they know the history so they can have a better understanding and love for the culture. And one of the things I also use, I use the word share when I'm talking with the younger people. I never tell them what to do. It's key about vibration. We talk about vibration all the time. And one of the reasons why young people do not connect with older people is because older people always telling them what to do. So I never tell the young people what to do. I always share information, and then they can use that information best way that suits them best. But I want to share the culture, I want to share the history, I want to share all the things that are good about the culture, because they already get the information about all the things that are bad about the culture. So I share all the happiness about the culture and why it was created and the things that people did and people names that they never heard before, but I know because I was actually there living it, doing it. I was part of the activation. And so I love working with young people. So we say mentoring. I can honestly tell you that I've mentored over 500,000 kids in my existence on this planet already. Guaranteed.
I bear witness.
Team Hip Hop, by the way. And Chuck, so we also go, DST didn't share this, we do bike rides around the culture, meaning that's part of the health aspect. We ask people to ride with us. So next year we are going to be setting forth, because it's been documented as the 50th anniversary of the culture. So we're going to do a 50-mile ride in the Bronx to honor the culture of hip hop, along with, you know, the museum that's going to be opening up there as well. So we are going to be putting together a team of people. And as we said today, no one creates anything by themselves. No one.
Right.
So thank
So
you.
Chuck, get that bike ready, bro.
Yo, man, I had to get, but brother A knows I had to get to this crib to bike ride over a mountain. So I made it in time. I was telling you,
I
right,
think you're
brother?
gonna make it. I didn't think make it over that mountain, man.
Yeah, I said I got to either do it after the mountain or before the mountain. So I happened to do it after the mountain. And yeah, what I'm doing, just to let everybody know, the Curtis Blow, Elder Curtis Blow swept me into the Hip Hop Alliance that he started after first being in the formation with Rocky Buchanan at the Hip Hop Universal Hip Hop Museum, which is another organization. There had been a bunch of burgeoning organizations, as many of us know, and I was already participating by way of Easy AD on Hip Hop Public Health. But Curtis Blow had asked if I work with this, with the formation of a hip hop union a couple of years ago. It began to pick up speed, bringing more people to the table. KRS-One is the chairman, who also had his Temple of Hip Hop. So, but actually what the Hip Hop Union does, it aggressively protects, is preventive of the measures in the industry, but also it's a connector, as I see it, as a connector of recognizing organizations that are out there in hip hop, Rolodexing them where you know that they exist, also being able to let everybody know that this art form can take care of itself. It will welcome organizations out there, and it's an alliance. Where it comes into its hard data duties, it's like, okay, everybody's here has been in the industry in one way or another. What is owed to you and your family? What can you get health care? What are the things that they slept on recording artists? If you wasn't a recording artist, you contributed somewhere. And it's like, how can you actually be part of something that unionizes as a force? And I think one of the biggest things that happened to the Hip Hop Alliance, that it found a partnership with SAG-AFTRA, which has been, the Screen Actors Guild has been a union of actors and, you know, Hollywood or theater and things like that, musicians, and you got the Musicians Guild. For the longest period of time, people in hip hop, even people in black artists in music, never knew that these things were for us. So this organization has been aggressive on one end in the going into the industry and saying, we are a union. Recognize us, recognize those that have contributed, look at what's there, what's probably due, how do you take care of people coming in? But on the other side of it, it's organically inherent to be connecting to those that want to organize and recognize the organizations that come in the name of hip hop. Me, I don't like to get into the whether this person's doing the right thing or the wrong thing, or that this happens to be this perception of me like, oh man, this is not good and this is bad and all that. And that ain't, people on this phone call know that ain't me at all. I want people to do their thing. I'm a firm believer that some things need to be in the corner where they need to be, and when they bleed out into society and are endorsed and are pushed to the babies, I'm like saying, nah, man, this is out there to destroy them, because when they're adults, they can make their choices. And even sometimes it's like, what is a youth and what is an adult? If you can't handle it, somebody got to be able to tell you about it. So I'm a firm believer. I'm a person that's born in the arts. And I believe that the arts has license to be the arts wherever it got to be, but there's got to be areas of where the arts is recognized, and how many people actually are knowledgeable about the arts. We're not. And then I'll know in the arts, our story is in the arts. Our GPS is in the arts. Our communication is in the arts. Because if we didn't actually deal with each other artistically in this land, we would be murdered right on the spot. So we had to artistically find a way to communicate with each other through the music, through tone, through language, through a head nod, through an eye blink. We've always been artistic, you know? So we want to understand, and this is a nation that has just recognized how to figure out how to deal with the autistic, but they still don't know how to deal with the artistic.
I have a question for Chuck.
Yes, sir, brother.
Brother Chuck, man, and this will help us. There have been biopics that have been done on rap groups. You know, you had NWA's, I forget the name of the movie, man, but it was
Straight Outta Compton.
Straight Outta Compton, and you know, Wu-Tang Clan did a quasi true biopic series, you know, how they came up out of the streets and what have you. I know RZA, I know Papa Wu, I don't know Method Man or Raekwon. They didn't really come around a lot, you know, in the early days of Islam. But you all story, Public Enemy story, I feel will be inspirational, a lesson, and something, because you're connected to the grassroots hip hop, the originators, and you'll have a very strong, positive message, right? Not to say that NWA doesn't, but y'all, you know, you got the S1Ws drilling like the FOI, you got you know, you got that trumpet voice, you know, how I initially came on, I did that for a reason, because y'all's music used to be higher to grab people's attention. And then here you come with the, you know, bass voice, and it's captivating. So I feel that you all's biopic will be captivating, educational, and inspirational. So my question for you is that coming?
It's got to be told right, because, you know, we ain't had no tragedies. You know what I'm saying? If anything, we've had incidents that they want to play up and make into a tragedy, but it ain't no tragedy. You know, NWA, it was glamorous to tell their story because they had tragedy, like they had this going on. It's like, it was the easy thing to sell to the world in America. And Public Enemy ain't an easy thing to sell. I mean, our story should be like given away, not sold. Once you put us in the area like, well, we put this thing out, so now we gotta do numbers. I'm like, you know what? Our numbers is just gonna be like trying to get a stadium. It's a stadium in Ghana or a stadium in Soweto, man. Everybody you can't be throwing no $100 ticket price to get up, you know, give everybody a chance to get up in that stadium for $1.50. It's gonna be 100,000 people in that stadium. You know what I'm saying? That's how a Public Enemy story. It's got to be like Watch Stacks was like $1 to get in the LA Coliseum. You know, once it's put up in this thing, oh yeah, it's like this, and people got to, you know, and so it's got to probably be one of those things where it can't be judged on numbers, man. It's a quality involved, man. And it's our story. It's a quality. It's not a quantity. And once you start getting into this number thing, oh man, you know, they had X amount of viewing and stuff like that. Even when like in the Def Jam thing, people don't understand. It's like, I came in the Def Jam thing because I was asked as an individual for 2 years by Rick Rubin. I rejected him from 1984 to 1986. And I said, the only way that I would do records, I got to sweep 50 people in. I gotta bring my whole everything we doing. You know, the radio shows, the S1Ws was the security at our gigs. We DJ'd, we MC, we had a whole environment. So I said, if that thing could come in, then all right, I guess I gotta be the MC. I tell you straight up and down, I tried to get another cat who I thought was similar to be me, but they didn't want him. I mean, he did the whole nine. He recorded Public Enemy #1. He, said, yo, this is gonna be Public Enemy. Me and Hank gonna fall to the back and just run this. Nah, I had to be the guy. So I knew if I had to be the guy, I go from being in the back, now I gotta be in the front. But then again, I had to divert some of that. I had a crew. So I could always dip and dab out because, Flavor was intentionally there to absorb all the attention, allow us to work behind that, But that, that works for a while. Then all of a sudden you find out that you got a whole group that you got to make sure that you balance this with that. You make sure that person feels good over there. You start at the bottom because you're hanging out with the bottom, so you make the bottom feel like the top. Because anytime you have a group, you have a pecking order. You have laborers and you got the people at the top who are probably getting the light, the spotlight and all that. And that becomes an issue if it gets out of hand. How do you weigh and balance that? So I don't want to see a biopic play with that and make it seem like it's a tragedy when basically it was we moving as a team of really moving as a team as 20 individuals. People recognize 2 and then they recognize 4. Then they recognize, oh, the S1s is 6 of them. Sometimes I see them with 8. Oh, the bomb squad, it's about 12 of them. Oh, 14 of them. And then there's other people and we all rode like that. And it was my job to make sure that I give everybody light and take light off of me. And, when it comes down to it, I swear, I didn't see anybody do a better job than I did balancing out. Look, you have a Griff on one hand, got Flavor on another hand, and at the same time, we a family. Man, we a family, but at the same time, we come from the same town, and cats necessarily not only are all of a sudden brothers with each other, but they might not ever even liked each other until we brought them together with the music and culture. This is what we're going to do with hip hop. And it's a beautiful relationship, even to this day. But you don't want people out there to play around with that. We know what our relationships are with each other. You know what I'm saying? To see somebody play with that in the outside, and we already had people out there have a different story about the real thing on the inside. It's my job to never let the inside go to the outside. To this day, the inside details of what happened, I can't let them go to the outside. So even if there's a biopic, you best to believe this thing I'm keeping close to the chest. I'm not letting out.
Yes, sir.
And that goes to me, that goes to say with a lot of things that we have as a people, as a culture, as organizations, everything ain't for everybody out there. Some things we got to be like, I know that, you know that, I'm taking this to the whole.
I give you a good example. What you're talking about, Brother Chuck?
Yes, sir.
What you just said is very important because the minister, he actually did that in the documentary. When he talked about Dr. Dorothy Height, he said there was someone that beat her up with words, and he wouldn't name the person.
Yeah.
And those close to the situation know who it is, but he refuses to name that person because he keeps it close to the vest.
Close to the vest.
It would do more damage if he said it than rather than holding it. So,
and you take the hit for it. As a leader, you take the hits because I could absorb the hits. My whole thing is to protect everybody, even down to Flavor and all the things. My whole thing was like, you know what? I'm not going to come out on him and say, didn't you hear this or didn't you say that? I'm like, yeah, but you're not going to get it out of me.
I saw the acid wash that you talked about.
You're not going to get it out of me. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I've done I carried Public Enemy 29 years in a row around the world. And I got counsel from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan directly. He said in 1995, after playing the Astrodome, a Black Family Day down in Houston. And I said, you know, like, we're at this point where I'm just trying to figure out, you know, like, you know, what's the trajectory? Because I know I'm an artist, I'm in the arts, I'm in the music, I know what I like, I know how we correspond as a group, but here we are in the middle of the 90s. And he says, well, what looks like fire will eventually look like ice, and what looks like ice will look like fire. I can't tell you what to do in your thing. I know you explained the music business to me over and over again and blew my mind, and that's saying a lot. I'm like, oh. But he says, you know what? Build proteges. As he said, build proteges. That's what he said. I said, I'm gonna leave you with build proteges. And I always try to build proteges, but in that time, as everybody will tell you on this phone call, by the middle of the 90s, placing proteges into those systems of change around 97, 98, 99, you know, Kool Kim transitions to NOIL because he even knew the soil underneath him was just like, I mean, I can't plant in this, so I gotta be this in that, because that's how that particular game had changed. So building proteges was just telling people, I say, you know what, be independent, don't look at the numbers, try to protect, you know, don't throw all your money in it. What you save and what you know is what you will make. And this period will transition into another period, but we can't predict the music game. But what I did was, I was in the beginning forays of the whole digital revolution and the MP3 movement, and how people would get their music not on CDs. And I was part of the first missiles shot at the music industry right after I finished He Got Game, this to end the major corporations' dominance of the music. Knowing that it's only going to be a window of time, I fought the RIAA and everybody, a window of time before they co-opt to new technologies. Facts, not feelings. What everybody remembers here is absolute beginnings. iPhone starts in 2006. Android starts around 2008, 2009. I was at the first conferences at MMM overseas when they was basically all mapping out as world telephone companies, how to get on this content delivery, but they had to wait for the right phones. That's why they called them smartphones. Everybody remember what they was using before then? Remember, some of y'all BlackBerry users, some of y'all single and wireless, and some of y'all, you know, I mean, I had something, I was on this little blue case that popped up from Motorola, and everybody was all over the place. Toya and Julian, who worked for Apple, down at one conference in New Orleans, she told me, said, come to Chuck, I'm gonna show you something. She shows me an iPhone. We sitting eating dinner in New Orleans, right? And she says, here's an iPhone. And I was kind of working with Toya because he was the artist liaison to Apple, you know, Steve Jobs, and it was still there. Steve Jobs was very particular about his device. And that's a whole nother story, maybe another town hall where the story needs to be said, because we went through these transitions. Anyway, she shows me the iPhone and she's putting her finger on it. I'm like, number one, I ain't touching no screen. I mean, it ain't even food friendly, man. I mean, if I'm eating like some fish and whatnot, I ain't touching no screen. She said, you will. I'm like, I don't want the iPhone. I'm good with my stylus on my whatever device I had at a particular time, you know? She said, but you will. Take this iPhone, please. Just take it. Because what it is everybody's going to be on it in 2 years. And I'm wondering, like, why is Apple making phones now, you know? Sure enough, with the white headphones and all, you know what I'm saying? These plans are seeded 10 years before they actually come out. And she's like, listen, we was talking about 2016 at this dinner in 2006, telling her I don't want the phone. She said, just take it. I'm like, okay. I still had that same iPhone sitting on my desk as a reminder, you know, this big, you know what I'm saying? This big.
Wow.
A long story short, you know, it was only a matter of time before the end of '99 where I actually coincidentally did a song with Prince. Remember, Prince was on the outs too, with Warner Brothers.
That's
He
right.
wanted to put out music
First
damn near
sleeve on
every
his
month. Right. He wanted to put out music every month. Warner Brothers said, listen, we don't even have the infrastructure to allow you to do that. No. So he's like, yo, man, it's me against you. And he had that battle. He said, I'm gonna change my name, put slave out. Y'all not letting me do what I do. Coincidentally, it's funny because Prince had passed, right? Once upon a time, they said he was doing too much music. Since he's passed, people say he didn't do enough, which lets you know exactly what this is. You have to always be a creative furnace, and no matter what you do. But we see these transitions happen. There was an absolute beginning. We've only been on smartphones 15 years. We don't have to go back 20 years. This smartphones is only 15 years. I have to talk to my youngest and I have to negotiate like no to Roblox. And Roblox is in a community that's everything pours through it. Yeah. The infrastructure, the metaverse, and everything that it's created. They've created. Look. They know that. Okay, you might be able to get control of yourself in this real world, but we're gonna build an inner world inside the real world and buy the real estate of your minds. The real estate is your mind, and they've already have mortgages. People paying mortgage and rent
for
something else, to the real estate of their mind. So this leads into all these things that form up like, what does a million person thing mean in the third decade of the 21st century? And I think what Easy AD also alludes to the fact when we talk in hip hop public health, the number one thing we talk about, right, AD, is preventive.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, yep. Preventing yourself from being sick, basically.
Right. So if you do well, it's like health is on your mind to keep you from getting to that point where now, of course, when somebody gets sick, the first thing on their mind is like health. I got to get well because I feel effed up, you know? So this is another thing. What is our prevent offense and defense for the next 5 years?
That's right.
We want to say 10 years, but what has happened is that the span of time has been compressed so much that now we got to look in 1 year, 2 year, really like 6 month windows now instead of 5 years, you know?
So let me add that. Let me add this. The intake of consumption of food is detrimental to your existence, and also it speeds up the aging. So what I've adapted to my life now, just general information, is I eat food 6 months out of each year. So I fast this month, the next month I consume food. So my fasting consists of just water, raw honey, and lemon. That's whatever month. So in October, there's 31 days. So, and then I don't really eat that much. I eat wild salmon, but you know, I'm gonna give that up soon too. But that's the only thing I eat. So in the next month I eat regular food, meaning, you know, food that's alive. So I stay away from genetically modified organisms, the ones that I'm familiar with, right? Because no one knows everything. And if you're not farming, you don't know where the seeds come from, you really don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
So I do that. So that's what I'm doing. So it's the next level of health, right? Because the food that you're consuming, it's just the process. It's full of different chemicals. And then, Chuck, you travel around the country. Those of us who get a lot to travel, there's certain foods that other countries don't even let them import from this country. So you know that they're deadly. So I'm just saying, like, that's the next generation about growing your own food. I mean, health is like being able to grow your own vegetables, your own just spices and stuff like that, and just becoming more conscious of that and taking the proper, not vitamins, the proper compounds, because there's a difference between a compound and a vitamin, and also understanding the bitter herbs and stuff like that. So everything is a science. Music is a science. Everything is the way you speak, your tones, the way you think, like I find that the brain is the most fascinating thing on the planet, and how people behave and stuff like that. So anyway, so that's the next generation of consciousness, is being able to not eat food every day and knowing what you eat, keeping it to a limit. That's basically the next level that you have to get to.
Hey, fellas, I gotta go. But I'd like to say that Easy AD has been a great help to me as far as nutrition. Since the pandemic, I became a vegetable farmer and self-trained myself to learn how to grow my own food. And I've changed my name officially to the Grand Washington Carver. So
right. You're crazy.
Hey, listen, I like to say, listen, how could this not be the seed of curriculum? Because when's the last time have you seen, we even seen some smiles out of Cool Kim tonight, even when he was torching. Last time you seen as many smiles on a serious conversation. See, that's probably the thing that was probably dulling you out on those other conversations, Kim, because everybody was like, yo, but this is like almost like martial arts. Like you lay back, you smile, you laugh, and say, these seem like solutions. This is embracing.
You know what it is too.
Hey, let me just say peace.
I'm sorry.
Let me say peace, man.
How do we find your music, brother? How do we come on, man? Give us a link or something on email address or website.
See, all of that's under construction. I'm reconstructing.
Okay.
Well, you got Instagram?
Everything. Yeah, I'm on Instagram.
Put it in
and
the,
Facebook.
at White Castles.
Grandmastercarver.com.
Say that again.
Could you put your Instagram in the chat real quick, or somebody put it in there so I can follow them real quick?
I'll put it. What is
somebody
it?
put it in there, but you guys, I gotta go.
Yeah.
What is it? I'll put it in. What is it?
Brain
DXT.
Brain grenade, man. Peace out.
Much love to you, man.
So real quick, I want to just say real fast before you wrap up, and I just want to just speak briefly on what the question that Assad read for us earlier, about, were we willing to work with the youth, and, have we, or whatever, to the extent. If I can just take a moment to share something with you guys real quick. I'm going to do this quick screen share, if I can do it without embarrassing myself. All right, let's give it a shot. All right. This is, let me see, this thing is showing me. All right, I want to show you this right here. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So this is Cypher Sessions, right? And what you're seeing right here is basically what I was describing to you, my youth mentoring program, where I would have MCs come out. The person you're seeing on screen right now is an older fella. He's actually my cousin named Cheddar Bang. Behind him is a gentleman named Diverse, who works for the Urban League as well, and does a bunch of other activist-based stuff. So that's Shaheem. There I go when I had hair. And then you see the babies, you know what I'm saying? Here the babies there. And, we had an open sort of thing so they can cuss and do whatever they had to do. We just wanted to get them in there so that we can start to, build with them and get them across, get them from being in a bad zone, get them into a better zone, just by doing actual work. This is me right here. You'll see at the event Blackbird Fly that my wife and I was doing every year for young ladies ages 10 to 21 for Horizon Expansion. The first day would be we call it workshops. We would have NASA, the flying into space NASA come through, and judges and lawyers and social workers and the military, the police, everybody was coming through giving these classes. And then the second day would be what you're seeing right now, which was a gala ball. And these are young ladies from the hood. They never wore their hair in an updo. They never wore heels, never wore a gown. They never had these experiences. And my wife and I facilitated this for them through the help of our Facebook friends and crowdfunding and just our own finances, to the extent that every year we found ourselves in landlord-tenant court, because we would be right at the edge of being evicted because we had put so much of our personal money into doing this for these young ladies because it meant so much to us. And we had children that were in their age range. And, you know, I tried real hard, bro, you know, ladies and gentlemen, to work with people because I don't really come from that vibes where you don't work with people. You work with people. Like, I need help. You know, I need this. I don't have that. I don't know this person. I don't know the other person. And what I have found is if I'm not the guy to you, then I'm not the guy. Like, you don't care what I'm talking about because you don't. And I'm not saying it in the angry space. I'm saying, like, you know, cats legitimately don't care. All they really care about is what they doing. And if you fly enough. So nobody was checking for this work that I'm showing you with showing proof. You literally seeing me at a spot where there's my wife standing next to me. You see me doing the work. You see the little young lady back there she was getting crowned as Miss Blackbird Fly 2012. Then nobody cared that we was actually doing this work. There was over 210 young ladies in here because I wasn't the man at the time. And that's a big problem that we have. And these things, these points that I'm pointing out, there's space for somebody to say, you know, Kim seemed like he had an agenda and he was like really saying a bunch of stuff, like seemed like he was just really had a chip on his shoulder. It's not that. The things that I'm trying to point out to you is, in the immortal words of Lauryn Hill, you might win some, but you just lost one. Yo, we keep losing us. Like, we keep losing the hard workers, the people that are really striving with all that they have to do something amazing in this community. We keep losing them because we not hip, but we talk like we are. We come to conclusions about the things that people are doing and what's happening out in the world and who's putting in that work and who did what and what. You're not even hip. Half us is in the ivory tower. We don't know what's happening. You don't know what the new thing is going on. You don't know what the new problem is. You're not connected. We become pragmatic. We're not innovative no more. We're not the ones that created this culture anymore. We're our parents. But we've got to break from that. And we've got to come into the space. We're old enough now, right? We're old enough now to have set aside the childish mindset that you had to be the richest dude, the most popular dude to be useful.
Right.
We have to recognize that there are people in our community who we are largely ignoring that are doing the work, are solution providers. And the only problem that they're having is no one's getting behind them. No one's helping them. The community-based work is a full-time job. And it behooves us to take the time to do what we see our open enemy do. And what does our open enemy do? When someone like a Kyle Rittenhouse hauls off and kills somebody in cold blood or whatever the circumstance is, there's $1 million in his GoFundMe for his legal defense. You know, when the police officer that killed, well, any number of our people, they be millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in they crowdfunding. Black man trying to do something positive in his community, $133, and he didn't put 100 of it in there. You understand? And so our actions are letting people know where we stand. Our words are dope. We're great with words. We're beautiful. We're eloquent. You know, we're amazing. But actions, we fall short. So if I can leave everybody with an amazing action item to consider as we depart from this wonderful conversation, and I look forward to the next opportunity. And I also like to take a moment to thank A-Tone and Angela for, you know, one, not only offering me opportunity to come speak, right, past my bedtime, but most importantly, is never forgetting me. Thank you for not forgetting me. Thank you, A-Tone, for not forgetting me. Thank you, Angela, for not forgetting me. Thank you for not forgetting my work. Thank you for not forgetting my effort and my sincerity and the effort and what I put into this culture and not forgetting me. You know what I mean? Because I found that experience very traumatic. And, you know, people just don't really understand. Like, I can't imagine what Chuck D been through. I can only scale it because of what I've been through just being by myself. But I ain't had to deal with the slings and arrows, outrageous fortune that he had to deal with, dealing with the industry. I was just dealing with people. You understand? And so that's trauma. And we gotta cover over each other that are doing that good work in these traumatic spaces and not leave everybody hanging in the wind that are doing good work, because good is not the default of this world. Good is special in this world. You know, people working hard to do the right thing is special in this world. And we got to stop forgetting that. The norm is cheating you. The norm is hurting you. The norm is getting over on you, disrespecting you. That's the way of the world. The special people who stand in the gap and risk it all for the sake of something so much bigger than them, they deserve us to remember them and to stand by them and to surround them with love and support. And I just want to, again, acknowledge and say how thankful and appreciative and blessed I am to be in the company of all of you wonderful people, but most importantly, to have a friendship with Angela and A-Tone that is sustained for many years. So when we talk about unity and unifying and peace, unity, love, and having fun, the peace comes because I found peace within myself, because you can't win when you ain't right within. The unity is because I found people that are similar to me and my tribe, that think like I think, share the same urgencies and priorities as I do, and understand the order of operations the same way that I do. So we're able to unify. The love becomes because the success, nothing succeeds like success. And because we have peace and we have unity, love is a natural occurrence because we're happy together, achieving and accomplishing goals that were beyond us before. And finally, once we've had peace, once we've had unity and found love, the inevitable conclusion is having fun. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Cool Kim, but you may know me as NOIL, and I approve this message. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Brother Kim.
Wow. That's some of the greatest words I've ever heard, man. In hip
Chuck.
After some of the greatest words I ever heard.
Hey, Chuck.
Yes.
Chuck, real quick though. You see, you should have made me your protege. We'd have killed them, bro.
I'm still waiting on my song.
We have time.
One more thing. AD is about to roll out, so let's give him a good send off. AD, any last words?
Yeah, I'm just we did enough talking.
Good health information, bro.
I am on social media. You can find me. You just type in Easy AD or anywhere I'll come up. So my information is there, and also the phone number is available as well. All I want to say is good night to everyone. And just remember, when you look in the mirror, remember that, respect that person that you see every morning. That's it.
Sir.
I just want to thank y'all. Thank Sister Angela, Brother A-Tone for this wonderful panel discussion. And I think we cracked it open and Adam that we need to do a part 2 some way, somehow, because there's more information to share. Only other thing I wanted to say before I went, man, is that, again, we talk about the war on hip hop, and I wanted to send a special shout out to a good friend of mine. I call him Al Starr. That's what he prefers to be called, but his name is Alex Avon, Clarence Avon's son. A lot of people don't know that the brother has knowledge of self, and he's gangster like his father. He does a lot of moves for a lot of people. He's been a friend of mine for a long time, and he lost his mother last year. His mother was gunned down. That is a part of the war on the Black entertainment industry for an 80-year-old Black woman to be brutally gunned down
in her home.
In her home. And the report, I won't say the source, but it's a good source that told me that it was 4 individuals on the property, not 1, but 4, that the surveillance footage caught. And the next day they run the story that one gangbanger, somebody who was robbing places, you know, that he was responsible. But there's a serious war going on out here that we really need to wrap our minds around, and we need to take a lesson or 2 from the pages of Master Fard Muhammad, down through the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who sits as a watchman on the wall and who is still here warning, not just warning and speaking, but organizing and molding and shaping us and planting seeds in us. Some of us going to pick it up after he's gone. But what I'm leaving us with tonight, we got to be security minded. We got to have those layers of security around us and be mindful of the people who we keep the company of, who we create with, or who we produce with. The wheat and the tare must be separated at this time. It's a time of separation. So we are at war, and we got to be ready, because the momentum is picking up. And I opened up with the science of the wheel for a reason, because that wheel, that mother plane up there is real, but so is the crown chakra and the blessings that come through it out of our mouth and our hand. In the art realm, Sister Angela's a film producer. She got a couple of films in the clip and she's going to be producing, right? But we got to support. We came together for a reason tonight. Let's just carry through, but please let us be security minded. Dietary laws is one thing on the physical realm, but also in the mind. Be careful of what you put in your mind. Peace.
Peace. Now, I think there's a question in the chat. We at the end, kind of beyond the end, but are you willing to, anyone here willing to entertain this last question?
Sure.
From the audience?
Yeah, we're here. I got to break out too in a second, but we're here for that question. Okay. And Brother Shaheed, that was on the money, bro.
I'm gonna unmute Danielle Asmani, but Danielle, please make it a question, because I'm a little tired.
Sleepy. I'm sleepy.
That's the bedtime.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Islam.
Really appreciate all the great dialogue and the incredible food for thought that you guys have provided for the past few hours. Really opened my mind up as a young brother who's only 24 that knew some of the stuff but wasn't really hip to all the stuff that happened in the 70s and 80s. So one thing, reflection I had personally, and since, well, this has been happening since 2013, but the last thing that happened was like P&B Rock's passing, is like the sudden influx in hip hop killing since 2013 that we've seen. I did my own research, compiling things, and I came across that there have been 15 young, talented hip hop artists that have passed since 2013 that are signed to major record labels, Doe B, XXXTentacion, Nipsey, Chinks, Lil Snoop, Pop Smoke, King Von, Young Dolph. Like you guys get the point. And I thought like P&B Rock was one of my favorite artists. I grew up listening to him since, before he had 1 million streams on Spotify. So I did a lot of deep soul reflection after he passed, leaving the gym when I got that text message from my friend saying he passed. I said, you know what? I grew up in the 2000s. Why don't I recall any of my favorite like 2000s hip hop artists that I grew up with that blew up in the 2000s pass away, from Nelly to Ludacris to T.I. to Young Jeezy, what have you, all them names. And then I thought, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, what happened in 2001? What did he organize in 2001 that galvanized the hip hop community together and brought deep reflection and unity and ending the beef and violence? The 2001 Hip Hop Summit. I personally don't think it's a coincidence that after that 2001 Hip Hop Summit, the rate of murders in the hip hop community went down drastically. I even looked up the research as well too. It was a fraction of what it was in the 90s. After in the light of Big passing, Pac passing, Big L, and a bunch of other hip hop artists. I truly think it was because of that great hip hop summit. So one thing that I've been thinking about, or like I feel like would be beneficial, or if we can have start a movement or like a little bit of a grassroots thing that Minister Farrakhan is always welcome us to have reflection about, is what if we have something of that nature, of something like a hip hop summit? Because I think the big reason why the influx in killings is happening is because these youngins, they're either too young to remember the 2001 hip hop summit, or they just weren't alive for it. If you look at the people that are resorting to violence in these incidents, they are young. They're like 16, 17 teenagers. Like some of them aren't even born for the 2001 hip hop summit. And like you guys mentioned before, when you build trust with the young generation and you show them this is our track record, this is what Minister Farrakhan has done, this is what the Nation of Islam has done, and bringing peace to our communities, you know, if once that level of trust is there, you can reach them at an emotional level where their change of thought will last for a generation. Like, you know, from 2001 to 2013, that's a long time. 12 years is a long time. A lot happened. But the fact that Minister Farrakhan, through his inspiration, he was able to save so many lives. And we hear on the news, like, you know, the big hip hop artist passed away, but it's not just those people passing away. It could be the right-hand man, their neighbors, their, you know, people in their crew. A lot of people die from these things, you know, in the Holy
Daniel,
Quran. Yeah. So, yeah.
are you asking, in that I'm hearing, I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. Are you asking, can we put together a hip hop summit? Today?
Essentially, yes. And before that, do you guys feel like a hip hop summit could do what I could have the effect of what I'm describing right now?
No.
I would like to just say that was the third hip hop summit.
Mm-hmm.
The minister actually come to convene in two other situations, 5 years apart, and then maybe 5 years before that. Look, I would just say this. Do you follow the NBA?
Yes, sir.
When's the last time you heard an NBA ball player? They're all the same age. They come from the same communities. When's the last time you heard an NBA ball player getting shot and killed?
It's been a while.
Everybody follows it. They on ESPN. They everywhere, and they everywhere. They could easily be identified, and they got more money than anybody, right?
Yes, sir.
How come they're not being killed?
I would say that there's no like glorification or lyricism that's promoting this type of behavior, maybe.
So you just think if the lyrics are getting these artists shot, they come from the same environments and they kind of like go into the same sort of places.
They're never out of character.
They're never out of character. That's true. Yep.
Never out of character. And here's another thing. If they're associated with major record labels, right? Understand this. Nobody's moving anything out there. And Kim, he'll tell you, he's independent. He's dealt with majors and he's dealt with being an independent. Nobody is truly at that level today independent, which means they're signing a contract with someone, somebody. Every single one of them have signed a contract with somebody on the other side who should be identified, like Shahid said earlier, and be held accountable because they're under their watch. See, the NBA ball player is under a watch too. They sign a contract. Oh, I signed with the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm in the NBA. And you got these things that say, this is what you can do, but we advise in order for you to stay here, you better do this. So they're not out of character. They're not out of pocket. They're not out of their lane. In this situation, they sign a contract with, maybe Atlantic, maybe 360, maybe whatever, and they're streamed or whatever, and they might have the impression that, they're independent, they just doing their thing, and no such thing as labels now or whatever, but you end up seeing them through what? Spotify, YouTube, and all that. And you see them through the channels that are owned and controlled or managed and operated by someone who's taking a check home to their community and their babies. And not to say you can stop them, but they're not even being asked. They're not even being identified as like, whoa, do you got any kind of blood in your pocket? How many people over the last 25 years got blood stains in their pocket?
Well, Chuck, you know what's interesting about that is that I read somewhere that of the Danielle.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, bro. If you have the opportunity, man, it would be great if you can do your diligence on this, and maybe if the opportunity that presents itself, we'd love to know if this is accurate. But I heard or understood that a lot of these young artists that have been murdered recently were all signed to a similar, like to the same label.
Mm-hmm. That life insurance thing they're talking about. Yeah.
A couple of them, right? And then it's like, yo, well, don't that seem a little interesting? You know what I'm saying? Another thing that we got to keep in mind too is that, you know, rap what they sell now versus the NBA, for example. The NBA, the business that the NBA is in, is a 5-year profit margin with an athlete. I got 5 to 10 years with this athlete, and they're worth millions of dollars in both the ticket sales, merchandising, blah, 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 commercials, you know, butts and seats, everything. You know, we got 10 years of time with this guy. You know, artists, it's not the same business model. And that's why I said knowing what business we are is so important. So when you understand what the business model for the artist is, they're never going to do like they do in the NBA, where they make you wear a suit to come in. You got to dress appropriately to come to work. Like, yo, you got to dress appropriately to come to work. It's a 10-year gig right here. You guys, 10 years, there's 10 years of millions of dollars being trained. Hip hop artists, they're put there to sell you this degradation and murder and misogyny and hypersexualization. And they're meant to sell you that. And they're meant to sell it to you in omnipresence, not just full-time, like 9 to 5, always. Curtis Jackson is never Curtis Jackson. He's always 50 cents. But the Terminator, after he finishes the movie, he gets to go on a press junket and be Arnold Schwarzenegger. And that was the big difference. Over the years, we used to say, man, we used to be like, well, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger make a movie and then he killed a bunch of people and nobody saying nothing to him. But when we make a song and we kill a bunch of people, somebody saying something to us. Why? Because you never stop being MC Guntote. You know what I'm saying? They do. And because of that, they never escape the fallacy of this false reality that they have now created and reaches up to swallow them.
And here's another thing. There's another thing, Kim. Another thing Kim added to that. If you don't have control of your reality, which means you're organized, you know the business or world that you're in, you have structure, infrastructure, those are your realities. The fantasy world takes over.
That's right.
Fantasy world takes over. The fantasy is the reality. The reality is not even existent. That's the reality. The fantasy world, the fantasy name, you don't go back to being Curtis Jackson.
Yeah, ever again.
Ever again.
Ever again. Right on.
So you guys don't think like drill music kind of become like the industry standard sound, like the way the lyrics and that is not really correlated?
Well, what Kim just told you, it's like a basketball player, there's a 5-year window business plan. Now in rap, there used to be a thing, I want to sign you to a contract because I guess, you know, if you blow up, we want you for 5 to 7 years. Now it's just like, yo, man, really? We trying to get a year out of you. we trying to get a month out of you, right?
It's just flipping humans.
I like to share this real quick too. Today, rappers are worth more dead than they are alive. So that's Pop Smoke is burning up the charts right now.
Dead as hell. Yeah. That's why I'm hurrying up and doing as much music as I possibly can independently for my wife and kids, so that when my day comes, I'm like teaching them, like, look, this is what you're doing, and release this way. They're gonna probably start looking for music from me from here. Tell them that Wild Pitch jerked me, so not to buy the Wild Pitch kind of thing. Tell them don't buy the NOIL stuff because I got jerked this NOIL and Baby Grand stole it from me. You release the music that I just did that's on my hard drive, and this way you can bury me and you ain't got to go on GoFundMe to put me in the ground.
Those are some of the things we're talking about in the Hip Hop Alliance. You know, like, because we've not only with the young guys the younger artists are passing away because of other means, but like to what AD was talking about, a year ago I put up a list like this, and it's still sitting around here, but this list has tripled of those that have passed on, and not being in communication or not being hip to the language of the future. If you can't tell your kids the business that you was in, how are they going to be able to know what to do with what they get?
That's right.
Blues artists, I first heard this, and I know I got to go too, but I first heard this when I was dealing with artists in the blues world who went through a similar situation coming up from Mississippi, playing Chicago electric blues. They get to be 60, 70, they get kind of popular to the audience, white folks or whatever, but they passing away at 68, 76 or whatever. And talking to their kids, like when they was actually getting this news in the 70s and the 80s, they were like, well, people would be coming by our house and picking up. And my mom was just like, oh, yeah, just go take it. Clearing out the attic. Like, yeah, Howlin' Wolf's daughters, it's like, yeah, we didn't know what daddy did. He just was driving the station wagon, and we listened to Temptations and Martha Reeves and all that. Daddy just do that. And then it didn't click to them later on, like, no, your daddy's Howlin' Wolf.
Right.
But their mom that gave away everything that was tangible and all the intangibles, like, man, he did 3,000 songs, you know, he's on this thing over here. What they like, we didn't even, we overwhelmed. And this is the top of the top. So what you're saying, Kim, is totally on point. Like, I don't care who you are, your intangibility, heirloom, legacy, and how it's going to ride in these universes that they put together, the megaverse and a metaverse, and something pops up for 25 seconds and, got your music in it. This is how they're going to possibly keep a light on, buy some real estate to be able to plant some food. I mean, who knows? The options are endless. But back to that beginning thing, if we don't turn that me into we can't make them, whoever that them is, accountable on anything, whether it's war, whether it's anything, man. It's like, it's an impossible, overwhelming endeavor as an individual to go at it. Because the coalition of collective, organized collectivism of me knowing what you're doing that I got over here to help your family, that's what you call, it's the true meaning of selfless. You don't do something in order, so, I helped this cat here, so I'm looking for something to kick back my way. That is never really, seriously, that was the Black community up to a point, and then it went somewhere else. This is like, I'm doing here, and I'm helping this young cat out, and I'm gonna help this other young cat out. I'm planting seeds, and hopefully, if I don't water, somebody over there is gonna water the seeds I planted over there and over there. At the end of the day, this is gonna be a forest that somebody else is gonna pick fruit from. It ain't gonna be me to pick fruit on. I do the math. I'm 62, right? Yo, man, really serious. The math is like, anything I gotta be doing, I gotta be thinking about, after me. Come on, what years, what are you playing with? At best, whatever they come up with, whatever super size, at best you playing with 30 years? How quick 30 years go? You remember when you made your first records, Kim?
19.
I'm saying, right? It's going like that, 30 years.
Damn.
Boom. So to understand the years that we got, that we've been through, that we got to play with, it's just like, these are just inevitable things that we have to do. Planting the seeds. You don't have to be like, this whole thing of, I planted the seeds and I'm waiting for the fruit to pop. It's like, that mentality, I'm waiting for the fruit. You don't wait for the fruit. You plant the seeds, you water, and make sure that cats don't pour gasoline on it. That's all. And you keep it moving, man.
Right. That's right.
Keep it moving. We know how to live with a 20. We know how, me and you and everybody on this panel know how to live with a 20th century mentality. We're like, oh man, the phone went on the blank, so I got to write this down. We know how to go on with our day, and it won't jar our day. Or if the phone fell in some water, it's like, oh my God, all right, cool. I got to keep it moving. I get another phone. That's not this century, man. That's what you call that's a weekender, man. That's a day ender. My day is done. My month is over. My gadget's ruined. My car don't work. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and it's a reality too. We can't just like, oh man, don't you know? Because I mean, when I was growing up, I eat eggs. I ain't pulled no egg out of chicken. I ain't twist off the top of no chicken head. You know what I'm saying? So when that was told to me, I'm like, nah, I'm not, I'm not milking no cow, man. I'm not feeling that. Right. So we got to say the same thing to our youngers, like, okay, I understand it's hard for you to go get a pad and write it down. I get it. That language, like you said, that language, we have to have that language at all particular times, especially if we coming from the art form. If we ain't got that art, if we coming from the art form of hip hop and we don't have no language, then how good was we at really believing that this is our thing?
Right. Wow, it's after midnight here.
Yes.
And the later it gets, the more Cool Kim looks like Walter Hawkins. So
I don't know I don't know who Walter Hawkins is.
hey, listen, before I go, I got a jet right now. I'm building something in the 50th year of hip hop that's going to be beneficial from the bottom on up. And that's all I'm going to say. It's going to be beneficial. Without a doubt, brother. Without a doubt. And
you know what? Let me say,
yes.
I'm proclaiming it, and I've been actually doing this whole year, and I want to suggest this to everybody watching. Ask for what you want.
Right.
I haven't asked for many years from humility and feeling like whatever, you know what I mean, like whatever insecurity I may have carried that didn't help me say, yo, ask cats. You know, you never know. Maybe people have goodwill towards you and will help you. And so ask, and especially when you're in the presence of your tribe. Like, I'm not letting the opportunity. I'm right here with Chuck D, whom I met one time in my life, right? I was this close to him for like a year. We were like right here. I was managed by Tyrone White. Back in the day. You remember Tyrone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was my man. We'd be up there all the time. So we was this close, but never quite there. Did a song with him, just got the mix, didn't get the like, yo, Chuck, this is what I'm doing, and none of that. And I'm here now. So I'm asking, like, yo, you doing the thing? Count me in. I want in. Now, if you don't put me in, that's fine. But I'm asking because nothing beats a try but a failure. And so we've got all of you with great talent and great skills, and you know you got something and you just haven't found the outlet. Ask, man, ask. The worst can happen is that you're in the exact same place you was before you started, which is you got to know. But if you mess around and get a yes, you will be so happy that you asked because you could have missed that opportunity. So y'all get out there and start asking, start being an active participant in the personal revolution that you have for your life.
Yeah, speaking of that, y'all, I've been silent and soaking up game since it got real deep. You know, I'm a younger guy out of everybody on the panel, so, you know, I defer to my elders when it comes to a lot of things, you know what I mean? But speaking of active, opening my mouth and speaking it, you know what I mean? That's what I do. It's part of what I do as a DJ, as a part of the community out here, the local DC, DMV community, and the broader hip-hop community. You know, you'll learn more about me as you do your due diligence. I am very involved with a lot of things, and I've been involved with a lot of things when it comes to this culture. With that being said, Chuck, Cool Kim, y'all look out for a DM from me. NYO, as a matter of fact, Cool Kim, you work with some of my guys out here in DC, John Eyewitness.
I was just about to ask you if you knew John Lance. I was gonna be like, son, we gotta build.
Yeah, Lance is my guy. Lance is my brother at PFW. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And Ali, RBI. I don't know if you know Malcolm Riddle.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I call him Chairman Mal. So, you know, he's a guy that he gets me, you know, a lot of music from the DMV. I play on Rap Station and on my weekly radio show, man. So anything that you got, man.
You've played stuff featuring artists that I work with and stuff that I've been on, as a matter of fact, doing like cuts and scratches and stuff. As a matter of fact, the last thing I came out with was a record with Cool G rapping, Big Daddy Kane. I did the scratches on it. So that's called Fly Till I Die. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. So anything you got, man, just connect with Malcolm.
Malcolm's my man. Malcolm and my man Katz. You know, we work with. Look, we were actually supposed to have been working on getting me over at Rap Station. To do some radio stuff. So let's talk about that some more.
Please do.
And I used to live in I used to live in Maryland. Probably used to live in Temple Hills, B.
Yeah, I met you.
My kids used to go to Camp Springs.
I met you at Copper House sometime back in the late 2000s. I mean, late 90s, early 2000s. You know what I'm saying? We met in person. Trust me.
I was in DC once with A-Tone and Angela, and when I went out there, right? And I just have to share this story because it's very important everybody knows. I went out there, I had some very progressive, snazzy luggage that I brought with me at the time. And it was pink and it had flowers on it. It was my daughter's.
And wheels, you know.
And wheels for convenience. And it has been over 12 years. And I still haven't heard the last about my daggone luggage. I had on the promo, I had to show that I have new luggage that's in black. So
that's dope.
You know, I done came up. Right?
Memories.
You have to redeem yourself, brother.
Hey, but yeah, we gonna talk some more, man. I don't want to make this all about me. Like I said, I was falling back, man. It's rare to have so many folks who I've learned and gained so much from. Like literally, if you guys really get to know me, you'll know how much you guys are part of how I move and my thought process, my creative process, and all that. You know what I mean? But Public Enemy, even my dad used to like Public Enemy. You know what I'm saying? Like we used to ride around listening to Chuck, but like Chuck. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, big time, big time. And UMC's, me and my man Black Ink, we always talk about Fruits of Nature, bro. You know what I'm saying? We always talk about that album. I play cuts off that album cuts, you know what I'm saying? Oh My God, It's Gonna Last is one of my favorite joints to open up sets with, you know what I'm saying? So trust me, you know, man, I'm knee deep, waist deep in the culture, if not neck deep in the culture, you know what I'm saying? A-Ton, I just want to say thanks, man. You know how we do. We go back to the Zulu Nation days, man. So
he was one of my Zulu Nation DJs back in the day when I was DC chapter leader. And RBI is like the ambassador of hip hop right now in DC. So yeah, gotta give him some props.
Sister Angela,
close us out, man. With prayer.
Yeah.
For sure.
You gonna send us to bed, yo? You gonna tuck us in? Let's do it.
Well, before we do that, I just want to say that Vanguard Television, we're going to be starting volume 2 of the Million Man March documentary series. And it's going to be called The Million Man March, The Untold Story, The War on Hip Hop and Black Youth. So we will be contacting everyone that's on this panel, and I pray that you all will be involved in it. That unity that you were talking about.
Thank you.
That's right. Don't let her be by herself.
For sure. And one last thing for me, brother Shaheed, man. Yo, peace, and great to meet you, brother.
Peace. It's an honor, brother.
For sure.
All right. Well, at this time, we can go ahead and close out in prayer, my brother. The same way we opened up. I'll go ahead and close us out. So please assume a position that's comfortable for you as we say prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Master of the Day of Judgment, thee alone do we serve, and thee alone do we beseech for aid. O Allah, guide us on the right path, the path of those upon whom thou hast bestowed favors, not the path of those upon whom thy wrath is brought down, nor of those who go astray. O Allah, I seek thy refuge from anxiety and grief, and I seek thy refuge from lack of strength and laziness, and I seek thy refuge from cowardice and godlessness, and I seek thy refuge from being overpowered by debt and the oppression of men. I bear witness that there is no God but you, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. Ameen.
Ameen.
Long live the spirit of the Million Man March.
Thank you so much, brothers. Appreciate you all. Thank you, Brother Chuck, for coming through in the clutch. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you, sir.
Yes, indeed.
My pleasure.
We're taught that the master climbed a mountain. He said he would climb a mountain 40 miles high just to teach one. And you climb that mountain, soldier. We appreciate it.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah.
All right.
E-bikes are good.
There you go. All right. Appreciate y'all. Peace.
All right, fam.
I'll spread my number and my information to everybody on the panel if we would. Brother A and Sister Angela. And
yes, sir.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam.
Alaikum salam.